My entitled mom refuses to allow me to move out of our one-bedroom condo, stating that I'm way too immature to live on my own and that I can't even do simple things like cook for myself. But despite the fact that I commute nearly 4 hours every single day to college, my mom is refusing to let me leave, putting me in a situation that is honestly so demoralizing. Here's what happened. So as the title suggests, I live in a one-bedroom condo with my parents, and I've been renting ever since 2015. For reference, I'm 21 years old and my parents are in their 50s. My dad is unemployed, so my mother is the family's breadwinner. Because of our financial situation, we can't afford a bigger place. So for the past decade, I've been sleeping on a sofa bed in the living room, and I haven't had a room of my own for many years now. I'm currently in my second year of university, and my campus is 2 hours away, meaning that I spend 4 hours commuting daily. And I know, it is exhausting, especially when I have early morning or late afternoon classes. My friends, relatives, and even my parents' friends are perplexed by this. They'll ask questions like, well, why don't you find a place nearby? Doesn't your university offer living accommodations? Why don't you move out? When I was your age, I already moved out. I know that in many Western cultures, students move out at 18 years old and become fully independent, but I'm Filipino, and in our culture, parents usually provide for their children's education and housing until they graduate. After that, then we're expected to be on our own. So in my first year, I suggested that maybe I could get a small, affordable place near my campus, but my mom dismissed that idea. She said that I wasn't ready and that I was irresponsible and that I didn't even know how to do basic household chores. So I made a conscious effort to prove her wrong. I started keeping the house clean, doing laundry, ironing my clothing, and cooking all for myself. Granted, she never got to witness most of these herself, since she's always away for work. I'm in my second year now, and I heard from seniors that the upcoming third year is the busiest with big group projects and productions. And for reference, I'm majoring in media production, so we have lots of late night shoots. So I will definitely have to live nearby. I brought this up to my mom once more, including tips my friends shared with me on how to find a cheap and affordable place, but she seemed indifferent to this information. Then last night around midnight, I was on my sofa bed browsing my phone when she suddenly came out of her room. She and my dad always keep their bedroom door open, so she probably saw the light emitting from the living room. She then demanded to know why I was still awake, took my phone and brought it to her room. This morning, after she had already left for work, I got my phone back from my dad and I saw some text messages from her. She then said she was disappointed that I was up late, and because of that, she couldn't trust and allow me to move out for my third year. And at this point, I'm livid. This is so excessive and I'm tired of feeling belittled. I could just say screw cultural norms and just become fully independent, but it's not that easy. My family and I are immigrants. We're from the Philippines and moved to Thailand. I'm not fluent enough to work in a fast food place or retail. Plus, work permits are incredibly difficult to get here. I tried freelancing, but it's so inconsistent. I feel like I'm trapped in some weird purgatory. How can I convince my mom to let me move out? Or is there another way that I can provide for myself? Because right now, I don't see a solution and I really don't know what to do. Okay, obviously there's some cultural differences here, but honestly, this really seems like an obvious situation. If I was in your shoes and I was like, man, I commute 4 hours total every single day to school, and I still had parents who were like, no, you can't move out, you can't do that, that's not allowed, then I would look to the school, especially knowing what my third year is going to look like, and be like, okay, there's got to be some kind of student housing or some kind of grant program to allow you to live on campus, because commuting 4 hours total every day is insane. That is really not ideal, and I just don't blame you for being frustrated. Now, I can only speak from my personal experience, but if I had a family member who was doing that, especially my parents, where they're trying to make me go to bed at a certain time at the age of 21, I would then be looking for a new place to live almost immediately. That is so unfair, it's not even funny. Because you are a grown adult, and I understand there's cultural differences, and I totally get that, but overall, I really do think that you should be able to live your life in the way that you see fit, and if living on campus would truly best accommodate your situation, then in my opinion, I think that's exactly what you should do. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. An idiotic customer calls in demanding the absolute best from us, despite the fact that he hasn't read our terms and conditions, and literally is so stubborn and rude that he refuses to listen to anything I have to say. Here's what happened. So I work in the call center for a travel company. We do a little bit of everything, but my specific department deals with the flights. We have several different price points and programs depending on the customer's individual needs, but most people just go for the cheapest option, the BOGO deal. Now, being a BOGO arrangement, these are basic flights, just simple, no frills, just get where you're going sort of thing. If you have particular needs, say you only fly a particular airline, or you must have premium seats or someone needs to travel with grandma who's on a different reservation, then all of that goes through one of our other programs that allows for more customization. All of this, by the way, is listed on our website, and there's a link to it on the reservation confirmation. And yet, each and every day, I get calls from guests who didn't read the terms and conditions. For the most part, it's fine. It's just part of the job. But then there's someone who I will refer to as Paul. Paul comes into my line as a blind transfer from another department, and this already has me in a sour mood because the typical courtesy at my company is that the other agent comes at me first and provides a reservation number and a quick brief on what's going on. And this is for two reasons. First, it gives me a minute to anticipate what the call's about and find any relevant information. Second, it prevents the guest from having to repeat themselves, which can make an already irritated caller even worse, which, by the way, is exactly where I found myself. So I think to myself, fantastic. It's only downhill from here. Before I've even said a word, I hear Paul grumbling and muttering to himself about how this is absolutely ridiculous. But even still, I'm a consummate professional, and after working my entire adult life in customer-facing roles, I'm pretty unflappable. So I pretend I did not hear him, I go through my usual security measures, I pull up his booking, and I ask how I can help. Well, what follows is almost 6 unbroken minutes of him listing everything wrong with the BOGO deal terms and conditions, that he would not be able to choose his airline, and that there may be a layover on his way, and that nobody told him it would be like that. Now, for the record, the thing he was afraid of has not happened yet. It is still only a possibility. Since his flights had at this moment not been issued, I had no idea what they would be, only what the service standards permitted them to be. Now, because I believe in guests being fully informed of the terms and conditions, I always go through them painstakingly with every single caller that I speak to. If a guest doesn't take the initiative to read them or to call, well, at a certain point, then that's on you. But still, I apologize. And the words have no sooner left my mouth when he snaps and says, "You're not sorry. Don't say that. You're not really sorry. First of all, don't presume to tell me what I am or am not. As it happens, I genuinely am a generally helpful person and will go out of my way to help a guest get what they need for their flights, even if that means not booking an airline with us. I would much rather lose a sale than not have someone's needs being met." So I just ignore his outburst. I let him know that he's within time to be able to switch to one of our other programs that would give him exactly what he needs. And while I was trying to explain that it might be slightly more expensive at a per person rate, he interrupted me and screamed, "Oh, so you're gonna charge me more? This is ridiculous." I said to him, well, yes, you can have the buy one, get one free flight, or you can have control over what those flights look like. You can't have both. He then shouted out, "But nobody told me that." Never mind that the terms are available for you to peruse at your leisure, but sure. I responded by saying, well, if you don't want to do that, you still have enough time to cancel air with us without any kind of penalty, and you can book flights independently that suits your budget and needs. I'd be happy to help you out with that. But this guy shouted out again. He said, "No, you just don't want to help me." And I thought to myself, well, you got me there. At this point, you're correct. I do not particularly want to help you any longer, as this conversation has now taken almost 20 minutes of my day, and your steadily climbing volume is giving me a migraine. I begin to say, "Paul, I'm sorry," but then he jumps in and says, "Why do you keep saying that? No, you're not." And honestly, I wish I could say that there was some fantastic malicious compliance or witty comeback, but there really just isn't. After something like an hour and a half of this cyclical shouting, all I could do was reiterate the 3 options on the table. He could go to our customization program and pick what he wants, he can cancel our flights and get his own, or he can roll the dice and see what his flights end up being. And you know what? I made sure to thoroughly note on this booking that I told him exactly what our options are, because the last thing I need is this guy trying to come back and pull this once again. Yeah, customers who act like this are honestly so obnoxious. Seriously, just read the rules and know what you're getting into, and then try to complain about it if it really doesn't fit your needs. But for this guy's only defense to be like, "Well, nobody told me that. I didn't know about any of this. What do you mean?" It's like, dude, if you really don't know what's going on, then maybe you should go with somebody else, because this level of malicious incompetence is not going to get you anywhere. And also, I love the fact that you documented everything that you said in this conversation. This guy would 100% throw you under the bus if given the chance, and the fact that you documented everything he said honestly makes it even more sweeter. So yeah, good for you for handling this exactly as you should, because this customer was completely out of their mind. An entitled jerk refuses to pay my friend the wage that he deserves after he literally revamped his entire garden. So we decide to get some revenge by causing problems with his house in a way that he will truly never forget. Here's what happened. Okay, so I go to tennis classes at the local club twice a week, and one of the other alumni on the class is a 50-year-old 20-year-old gardener. He's a cool guy, has been working in the business since he was like 20 years old, and we live in a small town, so a lot of people know him, and he has worked for quite a few in town over the years. He's generally well-liked and friends with mostly everybody. But there is one thing he does wrong about his business. He trusts people a lot, to the point that sometimes he agrees on a price for some work without drafting a contract, then he goes, does the job, and gets paid. It's the old school of thought that handshakes and your word are enough of a contract if you know the guy. Well, right next to the tennis courts, there is a house with a big garden. One day, one of us overhit a ball and it ended up in said garden. And this is honestly nothing out of the ordinary. It could happen. After the class, the gardener told us that the owner of said house owes him a lot of money because a couple of years ago, he did a complete remodel and overhaul of the garden, and when he finished, the house owner asked him for a couple more days for payment. Well, those days turned into weeks, and then it turned into the owner not returning the gardener's phone calls, but since no contract was signed, the gardener couldn't go to the police about it, or at least he couldn't legally do anything about it. So he had an argument with the owner once when he ran into him. The owner straight up said he wasn't going to pay, and then he said, "What are you gonna do about it? Go ahead, try to make my garden a mess just like it was. You can't set foot on my property or I'll call the cops on you." Well, the gardener ended up just assuming the money was lost and then moved on with it. A couple of classes after the gardener told us the story, the coach told us that they had to change tennis balls since they were old and barely bounced anymore. And they do this every couple of months or so. And there are about 3 to 4 carts, with anywhere between 80 to 100 tennis balls per cart. The gardener then asked the coach what he was going to do with all the old ones, since there is no recycling program for tennis balls in town or even nearby. The coach said, "Well, I'll probably just toss them in the trash." The gardener then asked coach if he had no problem giving the balls to him after class, and the coach said no, and he was intrigued. After the class was finished, the gardener gathered the carts and began tossing all the balls to the house's garden. The rest of the class, coach included, who also had heard the story that the gardener told, understood the assignment and began helping. Well, we ended up throwing about 300 something balls into the owner's garden. Well, the owner showed up a couple of minutes later to complain, and he was shouting by saying, "Hey, you're doing it on purpose, making a mess of my garden." And he was shouting quite loudly until he saw the gardener. When he saw him, he went mute, he turned around, and then he left. The local police came a couple of minutes later, and the officer knew the gardener and chats with him for a couple of minutes. Then the officer tells us that there's been a complaint about people tossing balls to the house. The coach then smiles and says, "Oh, you know, they're learning, overhits happen." And the officer just smiles and says, "Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's part of learning." He then turns around and then he leaves. And you know what? It's now become a tradition. Every time the club has to change the tennis balls, coach makes sure the gardener gets all the carts for a ceremonial game of tennis basketball, with the owner's garden being the bucket. Oh man, that's some fantastic revenge in my opinion. First of all, always get it in writing. I don't care what it is, if you have some kind of like financial contract with someone, get it in writing in some way, shape, or form, otherwise it doesn't exist. So that in and of itself is probably a hard lesson the gardener learned, but seriously, it's just absolutely necessary nowadays. There are so many dishonest people and it really sucks. But also, I find this hilarious. Because sure, the gardener is not stepping foot on this guy's lawn, but he most definitely is getting back at him in a hilarious way. And I don't know about you, but 300 tennis balls is a lot. That is a lot to pick up and a lot to deal with. So the fact that that's now all over his property, in my opinion, is well-deserved and entirely hilarious. My boyfriend is furious with me after I bought him NBA tickets to an all-star game he's always wanted to go to. And right now I feel very confused and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so today's Valentine's Day, and I was able to buy NBA all-star game tickets for a great price. And most of these tickets are usually selling for thousands of dollars. Now, my boyfriend is a die-hard NBA fan. I thought it would be nice for us to go this weekend since they haven't had an all-star game in 20 years in the Bay Area. But his reaction and response was so hurtful. He cursed at me saying I do too much, that I'm annoying and that I'm embarrassing him, and that he does not want to go. We did discuss it beforehand and I asked him if he would be interested, and he seemed excited and called it a once-in-a-lifetime experience, especially if his favorite players retire, and that he would love to attend regardless of where we sit. And you know what? I was happy to buy them. We both grew up low income, but now we make good money by working hard and I can afford it. I then let him know that I received the ticket transfer and was excited to share with him that we are going this weekend. But his response was extremely negative and backpedaled by saying that he never wanted to go. Well, I said to him, "Why are you being a jerk?" But he just keeps reiterating that I'm annoying by doing the most and that he had dinner plans that day with his buddy. He's also saying that I came up with his idea on my own and that I decided this for us, that I'm wasting my money and that I make poor decisions. Obviously, we can't read his mind as to what's behind this behavior, but seriously, what's going on? Does it really seem like I'm emasculating him or being inconsiderate consider it? Because right now I don't know what to do. Okay, first off, no, you have not done anything wrong. Your boyfriend is an idiot for acting this way. Is he seriously getting upset by being like, wow, I can't believe you bought these tickets I've always really wanted. You're doing way too much, and also I had dinner plans with my friend. It's like, dude, what are you talking about? These tickets apparently sell for what, thousands of dollars? And this guy's acting so insanely entitled and so weird about it. Because I know for a fact that if my significant other did this for me, I would be jumping for joy and I would be so excited to do this. I would be like, oh my gosh, I'm canceling all my plans, we're doing this is gonna be fantastic. So for this guy to turn around and act like a total jerk, like that is completely uncalled for, and that is something you definitely do not deserve. Am I the jerk for reporting my coworker for cheating in the company walking competition? Because my coworker is now very pissed off at me, and at this point, I don't know what to do. Okay, so at our last company meeting, they announced that they would have a step competition. Participation was voluntary, and if the average number of steps is greater than or equal to 5,000 per day, all participants get a Friday half day, and the person with the most steps overall wins an Apple Watch. We would log our steps during work days only for 20 days. Now, I've been in a funk lately and was glad for an excuse to get back into my fitness routine. I love running, and I asked if steps from running could be counted. Now, someone we will call Matt, who volunteered to manage the competition, said that it did. My goal was to have 20,000 steps a day, thinking this would easily put me in the lead, but on day one, this guy, who we will call Dave, posted 23,000 steps. I sent him a message on Teams saying something along the lines of, oh, it's on. And the next day I put up 24,000 steps, and he answers back with 25,000. Another coworker, who we will call Jenna, also joined in, and the three of us started having daily chats about our workouts. By week 2, it's almost certain that one of us will win, and the whole group is absolutely getting a half day off of work. Then I checked the log, and out of nowhere, someone who we will call Tiffany, who had been posting an average of about 15,000 steps per day, suddenly posts 65,000 steps. Now, for perspective, a marathon I ran resulted in 52,000 steps, so I'm just a bit skeptical. But also, maybe Tiffany ran a casual ultra marathon on a work day. I mean, who knows? So I sent her a Teams message and I said, wow, that's a lot of steps. What's your secret? She then said that she plays volleyball and wanted to count the steps from her games, but she can't safely keep her phone or watch on to keep count. To solve this problem, Matt looked up a chart online that gives a step equivalent for other activities. For example, volleyball gave 89 steps per minute, tennis gave 133, etc. And sure, fair enough, but honestly, the math is not adding up. So I said to her, wow, you must have played for like 8 hours. Her reply was to say, well, I also rode my bike. Now, this is where I call complete BS, so I clarified by saying, you counted riding your bike? It turns out she didn't just use the chart for volleyball, she used it to count everything she did and convert it into steps. So we're talking stuff like bike riding, stretching, yoga, washing the dishes, and this is all great, but those are not steps. This really seemed pretty lame to me, and I just added and said, I don't think that's really in the spirit of the competition. Well, immediately I went to Matt and I asked him about this chart, specifically if bike riding counted towards steps. He said that bike riding didn't count, and it was too different and also unfair since not every employee has access to a bike. I then thanked him for clarifying, and I told him that Tiffany may also need some clarification. Well, not even 2 minutes later, I get this message from Tiffany. She says to me, really? You complained about me? That's actually not in the spirit of competition. I lost a pet recently and I've been so depressed. I've been struggling to lose weight and I was so proud of my steps from yesterday. Not everyone can be a marathon runner like you. That is really uncool. Now, I knew I was being a little cheeky going to Matt, but Tiffany's message really took me by surprise. What should I do? Okay, I think someone in the comment section of this post said it best, but the real jerk in this competition is the company who is literally making you compete for a half day off. But in reality here, no, you're definitely not the jerk. You didn't do anything wrong. In fact, you did the right thing. Because Tiffany is straight up cheating. She's not participating correctly, and in my opinion, it kind of sounds like she just wants that Apple Watch. And it's like, no, I'm sorry, riding a bike is not the same as getting steps in. That is so stupid and honestly just doesn't make any sense. And I just love the fact that when you did call her out, she suddenly jumps all over you, not because she's offended, but instead because she actually got caught for literally rigging this entire system. So no, in my opinion, I don't think you did anything wrong, because Tiffany doesn't sound like the brightest person in the world, and I don't blame you for saying something in the first place. An entitled elderly Karen who can barely walk wants to put a deposit down on getting a border collie puppy, and despite the fact that we told her that this dog is a high energy dog, this elderly Karen is not taking no for an answer. Here's what happened. Okay, so there's this delusional, narcissistic Karen that lives alone and is so weak to the point of barely being able to get out of the bed. She also has no money in her bank account. Her previous neglected, bored, miserable dog recently passed away, so she called us the other week and said that she would put a $500 deposit down using a credit card yard on a $2,000 border collie puppy. Now, anyone familiar with that breed knows how high energy they are. They go crazy without regular exercise and mental stimulation. They act like puppies until they're about 3 to 4 years old. Well, she somehow thinks that having a high energy dog will inspire her to start taking walks when in reality, she can only walk about 20 yards before she's out of breath and has to rest. She also said that she plans on having it trained to be a therapy dog and visit hospitals and nursing homes, which is such a delusional, crazy idea as the training cost can be around $5,000 and it requires constant work with the dog from a high energy individual. I mean, she can barely drive herself places. How is she going to load a dog and walk around a hospital all day? When we asked her these things, every answer was about modifying the behavior of the dog so that it doesn't misbehave when it's bored. And of course, no worries about the mental torture it would be to the dog to have to endure days and weeks of no walks or play activity or even mental stimulation. It would tear her house apart at the very least. It was such a stupid idea. Well, when they found out 2 weeks ago that all of her adult children told her what a horrible idea it was, in typical narcissistic Karen fashion, she has never spoken to us ever again. Yeah, getting a border collie in this situation sounds like a stupid decision. Seriously, this Karen has no idea what she's getting into. Not to mention that everything she was saying was completely out in left field. Like, she will never take that dog to training, she'll never take it to any hospitals, and that dog will never be a therapy dog. Like, that's not gonna happen, and that's some weird justification that she's trying to come up with so that she can get this new dog that she is definitely not equipped to train. But thankfully, the adult children spoke some sense into her and basically said, hey, this is not gonna work. Because in my opinion, her idea was completely ridiculous. An entitled Karen demands that I give my ice cream to her crying toddler. And after I refuse to do so, she goes off on me and makes a scene. Here's what happened. I'm a 25-year-old female and I had to travel to a city 6 hours away for college-related work. The trip was pretty tight. I had to leave on Thursday night by train and reach the city on Friday early morning. I was engaged in work till the evening and then had to take the train to get back home on Friday night itself. When I got to the train at about 10 o'clock p.m., I still hadn't had dinner. And to be honest, I was completely exhausted. I just so happened to share my cabin in this train with this entitled Karen and her annoying spoiled child. There was around 30 minutes left for the train to start, so I went out of the train, quickly got some snacks and some ice cream, and got back into the cabin. I decided to have the ice cream first because I obviously didn't want it to melt. The annoying toddler saw it and started asking for it. I just looked up at the mom expecting them to step in and tell their kid to stop. Instead, she starts barking demands at me, saying, "Give that ice cream to my son right now and buy yourself a new one." I was taken aback because she wasn't even requesting. She was literally demanding me to give her my ice cream. At this point, after the time I've had traveling all day and working, I was way too exhausted to deal with anybody's garbage from anyone. I continued having the ice cream and I told the woman, the shop is right out there and they have all the flavors. The toddler at this point starts screaming and crying loudly. And so to offset the noise, I just put my headphones in and listened to some music. The mom then started yelling at me and started calling me all types of names. She said stuff like, "You're a brat. You're heartless for doing this to my child. You're trying to make me miss my train." And she went on like this over and over. Honestly, the other things that she said I couldn't really hear because I put my music at full volume. I did not feel guilty about finishing the ice cream in front of a crying toddler because at the moment, especially after she called me so many names, I was pretty upset. Not gonna lie though, I felt bad for the kids sometime later and did briefly think of offering them some of my other snacks, but I honestly just didn't want to engage in any form of conversation with this entitled Karen. The remainder of the journey was literally in utter silence. I told my boyfriend about this after I came back home, and he thinks the entire situation is absolutely hilarious. My mom, on the other hand, was not happy about this. She was more shocked than angry because I have always been great with kids, and she couldn't believe that I would do that to a kid even if the mom was annoying. But after some self-reflection and talking with other people, I've come to the conclusion that, you know what? I didn't do anything wrong. I can also attest to the original poster that no, you didn't do anything wrong in this situation. What kind of parent would go up to a random stranger and demand their food when they themselves could easily get out of the train and go get it themselves? How entitled do you have to be able to do that? This original poster literally was running around all day trying to get stuff done, and the last little bit of happiness they had to look forward to, this entitled Karen tried to guilt trip them into giving to their toddler, all because they didn't know how to plan properly for a train ride. Because apparently this entitled Karen's lack of planning is somehow the original poster's emergency. So good for this original poster for standing up to this entitled Karen and refusing to cave into their weird demands. Because if this entitled Karen really wanted to feed her child, she would have taken the time to make sure she planned for this instead of trying to shake down some random stranger for their food. Today, I messed up by lying to my sister about crashing her car. For context, my sister, who is on a vacation right now, recently bought a new car, which she let me use to go to my new workplace. So today was my first official day at this place. So naturally, I'm very nervous. I get up at 6 in the morning to get there by 8 o'clock. To clarify, I'm not really a morning person, but you gotta do what you gotta do, right? So I get up, do my whole morning routine, make breakfast, walk the dog, and everything else that I normally do before work. When I check my phone, it's 7:20 a.m., so there is still plenty of time left for me to get there. Or so I thought. I realized that when I checked the travel time, I forgot to account for morning traffic. So at this point, I'm almost late. I hurried along and ran to my sister's brand new car and prayed that I could get there in time. Luckily, nothing bad happens on the way there. But here is where I mess up. When I get to the gate, I have to press the bell so the gate guy can let me in. But I realize that I am just a little bit too far behind for me to reach the bell, so I get out of my car to press it. Easy, right? Well, not for me, because I forgot to put the car in park, and it remained in gear. So when I got out of the car, it slammed into the gate and messed up the front of the car. I panicked and decided to ignore the mess I made until I was done with work. All because this place doesn't allow you to use your phones, and I am already just a little bit late. Fast forward, and I finished my first day and left my boss happy with my performance. The only thing left to do now is to tell my sister that I messed up her car while she was on vacation. Well, here's where I also mess up. I call her on the way back, and until this moment, I don't know why, but I decided to lie to her and proceed to make up this whole story on how some dude must have parked into it in the morning and didn't even leave a note after he hit her car. So naturally, after being told this, my sister gets super pissed off and calls literally everyone she knows that can help and wrote into every single group chat and posted photos online so we can get some sort of info about the culprit. I start to realize how bad I messed up by lying, but I just kept making it worse by sending her more photos and making up even more lies. 2 hours pass since I have told her about the damage on her car when she calls me to go to the police station and file a report. This is when I realize that I have reached the dead end and I have to come clear. So I tell her what actually happened, and naturally she is furious and speechless at the same time. I called her an hour later and she tells me how disappointed she is in me and how she won't ever trust me ever again. And after everything else, rightfully so. This is really rough because if you had just been honest from the beginning, she probably would have been okay with it. Instead of this just being a private matter where you're like, hey, I'll help pay for the damages to the front of your car, you decided, hey, let's lie so I can get out of this. When in reality, you basically put yourself in a cage, and it was only a matter of time for you to realize just how trapped you really were. And your sister is 100% right to be upset at you at this moment. She wasted all of her time and energy trying to bring in everybody she's ever known into this situation so they can help look for somebody that doesn't exist. So this is definitely a lesson learned. It's better to tell the truth and own up to any mistake you made than to make up some ridiculous lie and then get caught in that lie. How do I tell my friends and family that I got back together with my ex who betrayed me previously? About a year ago, I broke up with my ex. I learned she had a secret friendship with her ex-boyfriend, and she would call him several times a week on the phone. She was insecure and too weak to end their friendship, so she kept this going until I caught on. When I confronted her about it, she lied and gaslit me so much until finally telling me the truth about her ex. I broke up with her, and I told all of my friends and family. They were shocked, of course, but they expressed that they think I could do better and that I clearly dodged something very toxic. I have been through several breakups in my life, and during this breakup, she was more remorseful than anything I had ever seen. I didn't tell anyone, but her and I continued a friendship for 8 months. I really wanted to see her get healthy, and she made so many steps towards that. She went to therapy every week for those 8 months and did a lot of self-reflection. I won't get into all of the details because honestly, that's an entirely different story, but I have seen genuine change in her from when we previously dated. I dated during those 8 months, but something just kept pulling me towards her. While we dated and after when we were just friends, I just couldn't shake this feeling that she was the one despite all of the drama. After a long friendship, we both came back together and realized we wanted to be with each other. We've been dating now for 4 months and everything is going quite well. The problem is that I haven't told any of my friends friends and family. None of them even know that we were friends, and some of them think of her as a stain in my past. I still don't know if I'm ready to let my friends and family know, but how on earth am I going to tell them about this? What should I do? I think your life is your business, honestly, and if you've seen some serious change in this lady, then by all means go for it and date her again. I think what you've explained in this story is exactly what you could explain to your friends and family should they question you on this relationship that you're picking back up. You can say that you've seen some serious changes and that you want to try making this relationship work again. Obviously, you can be cautious still and still have it in the back of your head, hey, this didn't work out the last time, but that doesn't mean that you can't have a healthy relationship and find some level of trust again. I also want to mention that both of you are close to 30 years old in this situation, and honestly, I don't think you have to explain anything to your friends and family, not for the most part. They don't get a say in what you can and cannot do with your life. They are literally just side characters in your main story, and I think it's important to remember that whenever making decisions. Obviously, you don't want to do anything that would negatively affect them, especially when it comes to family, but even then, if everything else fails, it's really none of their business. They can certainly stand on the sidelines and have their own opinions, but at the end of the day, it's your life and you honestly make the decisions on what you want and don't want in your life. Today, I messed up by telling my best friend that I loved her and possibly destroying our relationship. I've been pretty lonely most of my life. I've only had a handful of actual friends, and even then, none of them are people I'd actually trust with any of my problems, save maybe my oldest friend. We met when we were 10 years old, and we're pretty close. We're able to trust each other with personal issues, that is, until she had to move for college a year ago, where some distance was created, but we chatted every other day. I formed a bit of a crush around 12 years old, and it honestly just got bigger and bigger from there. Though I did confess to her at one point, she wasn't interested, and we were just teenagers at the time. Thankfully, nothing really changed, including my feelings, despite how hard I tried to bury them. Now she's on break for a month or two, and she decided to come back here for a handful of weeks to catch up on things. We actually trust each other enough that we originally planned for her to stay at my place, but since I would be busy with college work, she didn't want to bother me. We meant to meet sooner, but I was stuck with the aforementioned work, so we ended up meeting today. It was pretty nice. I picked her up in my car and we spent a lot of time together for several hours. We went to a movie, a restaurant, the arcade. Eventually, it got really late, so we got in my car so I could drive her back to her apartment. My friend was tired and very sleepy, to the point where she was zoned out in the passenger seat, and I genuinely thought she was asleep. I thought I had moved on, but apparently not. It was a pretty bittersweet moment, to be honest. Just driving on empty roads at night with the radio playing quiet music while she was sleeping next to me. I both wanted to grin so hard it would break my face, as well as burst into tears when I realized that I still loved her. I had to pull over for a second because I just couldn't stop looking at her. And in the heat of the moment, with me genuinely thinking she was asleep, I said, "I love you." I wasn't even sure I had said it was so quiet. But apparently I did, because she immediately shot up in surprise. I tried to backpedal, but there really wasn't anything to backpedal from that. She tried to say something, but she couldn't get the words out. I'm guessing just from the shock itself, but I doubt it was anything close to her agreeing that she loves me as well. Wishful thinking at best, to be honest. Afterwards, she just zoned out for the rest of the drive before silently getting out at her apartment building. I'm sitting in my car at an empty parking lot, and it's some ungodly hour of the morning as I type this all out. I'm really trying not to freak out because I just opened up a whole Pandora's box of garbage that hasn't been touched in nearly a decade since we were kids. Losing her as a friend will hurt 100 times more, since she is the only friend that I've ever actually been vulnerable around. I don't think she'll hate me. She isn't that type of person and is way too kind for her own good. But I'm really worried that I just damaged our friendship in a way that can't be really fixed. It was my responsibility to bury this stuff, and I failed at that responsibility. Honestly, I wish I could rewind my life by about 3 hours and just kept my mouth shut, because I'm pretty sure I just ruined my friendship. I mean, talk about a really weird time to confess your love for somebody. You literally pulled off onto the side of the road, stared at her as you assumed she was sleeping, and said, "I love you." Sorry, but that's just super creepy. You should have done this in a better setting, in a better situation, because this definitely looks super sketchy. And if I was in her situation, I probably would have silently looked out the window and hoped this car ride would end as well. So next time, maybe consider the timing of this kind of thing, because the way you went about doing it is completely all wrong in my opinion. But despite how awkward the situation situation was, if she really is your friend, I don't think this is going to destroy your relationship. Friends do stupid and weird and awkward things around other friends all the time. And if she's anything like you've described, then she might be more understanding about what happened. You did at one point confess your feelings to her when you were both teenagers. And while, yeah, that was a long time ago, it can hopefully account for the way you're acting right now. And honestly, even if she does not feel the same way about you, it does not mean the end of your friendship. So hold fast, take a deep breath, and just see what tomorrow brings. Because you might be surprised. It's probably not going to be nearly as awkward as you think it's going to be. My roommate takes my snacks and food without saying anything, and honestly, it's starting to drive me crazy. I'm in a shared accommodation with 2 other girls. We are all students, and this is a weird thing that's been happening that I really need some opinions on. We have movie nights from time to time, where we will either cook or order something to eat. I usually bring along drinks or snacks for us to have as well. Once the night is done, the leftovers I just put in the fridge on my side of the shelf for myself, but one of my roommates, who I will call Sarah, that's not her real name, will go into the fridge and help herself to whatever she needs without even asking me if it's okay for her to do that. The same thing happens with whatever snacks I may bring along on the day. Normally, I let it go, but recently something weirder has happened. We went for a hike as a large group and agreed for all of us to bring snacks. I drove all of us as she doesn't drive. I brought a whole bunch of things that I had cooked and also bought a bunch of chocolates and nice snacks from the shop. She brought a bag of popcorn and left it in the back of the car and didn't offer her food on the long drive to the hiking ground and spent the entire 3-hour drive eating more than half of the things I had cooked all by herself. On its own, I didn't care that much, but the next day, she asked for a ride from the university back to our house, and while in the car, she noticed that her popcorn was still in the car in the back, along with a lot of my snacks and chocolates, all of which were left over from our hiking trip. She picks up a bag and puts all the snacks in it and says, "Oh wow, lots of snacks are left over." She fills the bag up with all of it, talks about how much she loved the different types of snacks I had gotten, and then when we arrive, takes the bag full of snacks and goes to her room. She didn't even ask if she could have all these snacks for herself. Nothing of the sort. Instead, she just takes the bag and goes to her room. Is this normal? I don't want to be rude here and tell her off about the snacks, but I thought this was so inconsiderate to just take things without at least asking for them. I don't want to cause a hostile living environment for myself. Am I being the jerk in this situation? How do I communicate with her without causing a big issue or a fight? I'm stuck in this lease for another 5 months, so I need to communicate things without having a negative living environment. What should I do? It honestly sounds like your roommate is taking advantage of your kindness, and you really should talk to her about it and say, "Hey, that food was actually for me. I bought it, so it's still mine. Sure, you brought it as snacks for the whole group, but now that that trip is over, that food becomes yours again. It's not up for community grab anymore." And maybe they don't understand that. Maybe they thought, "Oh, this was snacks for everybody, so I can just rate it and have fun with it." Obviously, that's not the case, and they're clearly just taking advantage of that and saying, "Hey, I'm going to take it and run." So I think having an honest conversation the next time this comes up would really be helpful. I'm not sure there's anything you could do about the previous situation of them taking all your snacks and running to your room, but I definitely think there's ways you can bring this back up with your roommate and let her know, "Hey, I don't appreciate you taking my stuff without asking." And there's even a possibility here that your roommate might not know they're crossing a boundary. If they don't know they're doing something wrong that's bothering you, they might think this is okay. So explaining to your roommate that, "Hey, this is not okay," and that you would really prefer if they asked first before they start taking your food would probably go a really long way. Today, I messed up by telling my pregnant Catholic wife that I don't want to force our child into Catholicism. This happened minutes ago as I sit in the bedroom with my tail between my legs. My wife and I have been happily married for 2.5 years, and we've been together for almost 5. I am agnostic. That means that I believe in a God or a higher power, but I don't necessarily believe in any religion, but also don't discredit any religion. She was raised Catholic by both of her parents. I apologize in advance if anyone finds these words offensive or insulting. That is honestly not my intention. I would say she's not one that eats, breathes, and sleeps her religion. She stands strongly by her faith, but allows room for her own thinking. We almost never talk about religion because we respect each other's beliefs, and that's that. Therefore, it's never been a point of contention. However, she's 3 months pregnant. which is bringing up the religion conversations. So far, my wife has said things like, I'm taking our child to mass, getting it baptized, and it's going to Catholic school. I'm raising it Catholic. And overall, I'm generally just kind of like, whatever. And my attitude towards this is very relaxed because it's not my realm of expertise, but lately it's been bothering me more and more. Again, I don't have a problem with religion, but from my perspective, to force a religion on a child seems kind of selfish to me. I do love the guidance it provides people, but it's not for everyone. That's my take on it, at least. Today during dinner, she brought up how she wants to get a child's Bible and read it to our baby each night. In response, I said I would also like to read something to the child that details other religions as well, so it gets the chance to expand its horizons and think for itself. A bit of mommy's beliefs and a bit of daddy's mindset. That couldn't be harmful, right? I'd like for our child to make its own decision at some point on which religion it would like to follow. I thought this would go over fine, but nope, all hell broke loose. I did my best to explain this by using a dice as an example. If I put the dice in my hand and covered all sides except for the number 1, I said, this is what you want for our child. You want to show them this one side, but it doesn't know that there are other sides that exist. Through life experiences, they'll learn the other 5 numbers, but it's now become so partial to the number 1 that it doesn't care what the other numbers have to offer. All I want to do is expose our child to all 6 sides and let it pick its favorite number. And I should have known better than to bring this up to my pregnant wife, but she basically said, nope, not happening. The child will be raised Catholic until it's a teenager and can make its own decisions on their religion and faith. She then basically said, don't ever talk to me about religion again, and said that she wished she was never pregnant. I now feel so trapped and helpless regarding my child's development. As an agnostic, it really feels like garbage being looked down upon and not taken seriously by someone, especially my wife, that has comfort in their belief system. Apparently, I can't talk to my wife about it, so here we are, venting to a bunch of strangers. And honestly, I'm not sure what to do about it. This is a rough situation to be in because honestly, why did this conversation not come up before you had a child together? Like, both of you have very significantly different mindsets when it comes to religion, and you both have probably very different upbringings. Why didn't you decide, hey, this is the direction we're going to go with our child? I don't think talking to your pregnant wife, who's on the verge of having this child, is really the best time to try and have this conversation. But either way, I wish you the best of luck in getting this figured out, and hopefully there's not a lot of contention whatever you guys decide to do. An entitled Karen thinks she's above the rules after claiming that her aunt owns the building. But once we find out that's a lie, karma comes back to bite her, and she gets put in her place in a beautiful way. Here's what happened. This story takes place the summer of last year. My job is quite time-consuming, with a standard shift of mine more often than not starting at 10 in the morning and ending at 9 o'clock at night. A single shift pretty much consumes my entire day, with me typically working 5 days a week, or sometimes 6, depending on which rotation we happen to be on that week. Needless to say, I enjoy my days off, so I was relieved when June rolled around and I had a week's vacation scheduled for a much-needed break. Rather than traveling anywhere for vacation, I simply wanted to spend that time at my apartment's pool with some drinks and some music and my feet up. But all of that gets derailed once this entitled Karen and her kids roll up. There I am one beautiful summer's afternoon, lounging by the pool, catching some rays, and all with not a care in the world. At one point, I glance over to the other side of the pool and I see 2 kids, probably no older than 7 or 8 each of them, with glass bottles provided by their entitled Karen of a mother. Now, the pool has a few generic rules. No running, no food, no smoking, stuff like that. However, these aren't really enforced. The only rule that is absolutely 100% enforced is that no glass is allowed in the pool area. The reason this rule is so important is because if glass breaks in the pool area, not only is it a hazard for everyone walking around barefoot, but maintenance has to assume that glass got into the pool itself, and they will have to drain the pool to remove the glass from it. With that being both a timely as well as a costly procedure for the apartment complex to do, they won't refill the pool for the rest of the season because of it. They only want to drain it once and won't refill it again. So for the benefit of everyone's safety, as well as not having the pool be drained months before pool season is supposed to end, the leasing office and staff actually encourage tenants to enforce this rule amongst one another to ensure that it's actually being followed. So I get up and I walk over to them and I ask them pretty plainly, is that a glass bottle you've got there? After one of the kids nods yes, I say, okay, I only ask because the staff says they don't want those in the pool area because they could break and they'll close the pool down for the season if that happens. The entitled Karen chimes in and says, my aunt owns all of these buildings and you don't have to be the glass bottle police. They're being careful. It's It's fine. Now, in my head, I'm immediately questioning her claim that her aunt apparently owns these buildings, as the apartment complex is owned by a property management company that oversees many different buildings, houses, apartments, and it is definitely not owned by just one person, as this entitled Karen dismissively described. After this entitled Karen said that, I said to myself, I'm on vacation, and honestly, I'm not going to take any more time out of my day to argue about the validity of her statement, nor make any future fuss about the glass. So I just shrugged and went back to my chair on the other side of the pool. I'm not going to spend my cherished time off trying to argue pool rules with a Karen when it's the staff's job to do so. I did, however, shoot the apartment supervisor, Miguel, a text message saying that a big sign on the door to the pool saying "No glass, no exceptions" clearly wasn't an obvious enough indication, since there's people who just ignore the rules, all because apparently their aunt owns the buildings. Now, Miguel's a cool guy. He's hung out at the pool with us several times and has always been good about repairs, accommodations, and anything else the tenants need. After he got this text message, he was not happy about this, because he has heard every excuse in the book from, "Oh, we're just being careful," as well as people rationalizing it away, saying, "Oh, the glass bottle's nowhere near the water, it's fine." He has heard this many, many times, and he still can't believe that so many people can't follow one simple rule. Miguel messages me back and says he has the day off, otherwise he would be more than welcome to come down and tell them himself that they can't have glass at the pool. But he said that he's going to text the leasing office manager, whose name is Hannah, and tell her all about it, and says that she would take care of it from there. At this point, the entitled Karen and all of her kids had already left, so I had thought it was all in the rearview mirror and taken care of. But boy was I wrong. About 5 minutes or so later, I noticed that the entitled Karen was coming back to the pool with a bit of urgency in her step, and she was heading specifically towards me. I thought to myself, here we go. She walks up to me and she looks enraged. "Hey, you," she says to me. As I look up to her to try and respond in some kind of way, she interjects and starts screaming at me, telling me how she got a phone call from her aunt and she was basically put in her place about having the glass bottles. She goes on to say, "Was that really necessary? Did you need to do that? You're so stupid." At this point, I was feeling petty, so I responded, "I'm not stupid, I'm handsome." This really set the entitled Karen off because she said, "No, you're fat and you're ugly. I bet you got teased when you were in high school." And so I said, "Actually, I was more or less busy in high school learning how to do basic things like reading and writing. And now I can read things like that sign on the entrance that says 'No glass, no exceptions.' What about you, ma'am? Can you read?" The entitled Karen turns beet red and storms off, muttering something under her breath that I can't quite make out. But I just go back to my corner, thinking about getting back to enjoying my vacation. Only now I see Hannah coming out of the leasing office and heading my way. I meet her at the pool entrance, and she tells me that Miguel texted her about the glass at the pool, and that she immediately knew who they were. Turns out the entitled Karen's aunt didn't own the buildings, as she tried to say earlier, but rather just ran the front desk, answering the phone for the holding company that actually owned the complex. The entitled Karen's aunt had called Hannah and asked her to let this lady and her kids in the pool for the day. Once Hannah got the text message from Miguel about the glass, Hannah called the aunt and relayed the message, which in turn resulted in the entitled Karen getting a call from the aunt asking her to get rid of the bottle. The cause and effect of this blew me away, and I apologize for creating such a terrible situation for Hannah, because I didn't think it would get this out of hand. But Hannah assured me I was completely in the right and thanked me for reporting something that could have been dangerous. I'm delighted to say that this story has a happy ending. Because of my good deed, Hannah was able to hook me up with a new AC unit installed into my apartment. Normally, it would have been a process to look for an AC and to do all sorts of other stuff to try and maintain it, but because I was on Hannah's good side and I had done a good thing and a good deed overall, they gifted me with a brand new AC unit to be installed the next day. So because of this entitled Karen, I got a new AC unit, all because I tried to make people follow the rules. And honestly, that sounds pretty good to me. I honestly love it when I see entitled Karens get put in their place in a way that is so beautiful. They try and make up some bogus lie that their aunt owns all the buildings, as if they're like Bill Gates or something, and then they get put in their place in the most beautifully embarrassing way that will hopefully correct this kind of behavior and prevent them from being so entitled in the future. So good for this original poster for doing what is right and protecting people from, I don't know, stepping on broken glass, because nobody needs some dangerous entitled Karen walking around with glass bottles at their pool anyway. anyways. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for getting my neighbors kicked out of our apartment complex? I'd like to start off by saying that this was a few years ago. I live in an apartment complex, and while housing as well as the owners are good, and they keep things well maintained and such, they really don't care about the people that live there, so long as it doesn't result in legal trouble. After a year of having a sweet old lady for a neighbor, the new horrible ones moved in. There were 4 of them in total that moved into the apartment, meant for just one person. 1 week later, I catch the 2 kids playing with the hose that I bought and is hooked up to my apartment's water. I went out and turned the water off before politely asking what they were doing and why they were using my hose. They responded by saying, "We want to see the rainbows. Mommy and Daddy said to use the hose to see them." I knocked on the door and asked them to not use my hose and water for anything without my permission, since I'm the one paying for it. They gave me a dismissive yeah, whatever, while rolling their eyes. This pattern continued until I had had enough and told them that I would be getting housing involved if they didn't stop. From that point on, they constantly had 10 or so people in or around the apartment 24/7 and always made a lot of noise deliberately all day. They only stopped at night so nobody could call the police. And those extra people would stay for weeks at a time, taking up any guest spot as well as roadside parking in the process. A few months later, I hear the porch by the door creaking and turn just in time to see the dad from this apartment speed walk away. They were spying on me from my front door and probably have been for a while now. The next day, I got a knock on my door and a cop was there. They asked if I knew anything about my neighbor's side of the building being vandalized. I didn't and told him as much. He told me to keep an eye out and to try and get evidence like pictures or a video if I can. I much later found out that they vandalized their own apartment exterior to try and get me arrested. The last straw came when they called the cops on me again. This time they claimed that I was threatening them and that I was making some serious plans to do something. When the cops showed up, it was all just a big misunderstanding, and despite trying to explain this to the officer, I was chewed out for 10 minutes before he left. After that, I had had enough and reported everything that they did for over a year, all of which caught on the cameras the owner set up because these neighbors were selling something very illegal, if you know what I mean. They were evicted shortly after that, and thankfully I never had to deal with them ever again. You are definitely not the jerk in this situation, and that honestly really sucks you had to deal with that. I've had some terrible neighbors myself that absolutely made me want to pull my hair out, and it really sucks when you're dealing with those types of people because at the end of the day, there's not much you can really do unless you catch them in the act and have it on some type of recording. Thankfully though, it looks like that's exactly what happened and these people were able to get kicked out of their apartment. What's even worse is the fact that they would falsely accuse you of doing stuff and try and get you reported to the police, all because you stopped their stupid kids from playing with your water that you would have to pay for. Such an unfair situation, but at the end of the day, you won because they have to live somewhere else. And honestly, that's the kind of karma anybody would look for after going through this for over a year. I broke up with my boyfriend and moved out, but he's still acting like we're together. And honestly, I don't know what to do about this. The other day, I finally ended things. I packed my belongings, told him that I'm breaking up with him because of his drinking problem, as well as him constantly treating me like garbage, said I was completely done with him and I was gone. I moved out the same night I said that. I told him that because I love him and because I care about him, I told him I'd like to try and remain friends as well as to include him in my life in some ways. I even agreed to go to a movie this weekend that we were originally planning on seeing. The thing is, he is still texting me constantly, starting it with babe and ending it with I love you. And because of this, I feel obligated to tell him that I love him back. When I was leaving, he asked if it was forever, and I didn't want to say yes and hurt him more, so I said something like, I can't say what the future holds. Honestly, this entire situation is incredibly messy, and I'm just not sure what to do. I'm really confused by this original poster because you basically said, hey, we're breaking up, and then decided to still go on dates with them, still text him and be like, hey, I love you, as well as kind of lead him on. So did you really break up with them, or what's going on? And also, why would you want to still be friends with this person? He has a drinking problem, he treats you like garbage, you've clearly made that known, and you moved out of his house leaving him behind. Like, it seems like you did everything that you would normally do when you're breaking up with someone, except for actually break up with them. To allow this person to still be in your life after making these types of moves, in my opinion, makes it seem like you are not serious about breaking up with him. It all looks like a really bad act, and and is honestly sending mixed messages. If you're really breaking up with him, then you would act like it. You didn't even act like this is a forever situation where you are completely done with him. You couldn't even give him a solid answer because you didn't want to hurt his feelings. Well, guess what? He's hurt your feelings plenty of times by treating you like garbage. Why on earth are you now picking your battles? If I was in your shoes, I would set some very clear and serious boundaries. I would tell them, no, I don't love you like this anymore. If I'm kicking this person to the curb, guess what? They're going to the curb, and no amount of guilt tripping is going to bring them back. So yeah, you need to communicate much clearer that no, this isn't just a break. We're not getting back together. The relationship is over and it's final. The guy that you're breaking up with clearly seems like a complete moron, so you need to be a lot more clear and direct. He is not going to read between the lines. You need to be crystal clear, otherwise he's absolutely not going to get it. But what would you do if you were in this situation? Leave a comment down below. We would love to hear it. My aunt, who never took care of her own mother, wants her inheritance, and I had to watch on the sideline as my parents had to deal with it. This happened quite a while ago, so I'm not sure of all the details, as I've honestly tried to block them out. My grandma was always in my life. When I was a toddler, I would go to her apartment for her to babysit me. Eventually though, because of some housing issues, she was kicked out of her apartment and lived with us, me, my mom, and dad. From 2018 to 2019, her health declined dramatically, and she had a major stroke. She had smaller ones before, but this one left her paralyzed on the right side of her body, as well as a host of other medical problems. In March of 2020, in a nursing home alone, unable to move or speak anymore, she passed away in her sleep. My mom was understandably very upset and could barely stop crying, and since I was a kid, I was also very sad at the time too. About a week or so after she passed away, one of my aunts texted my mother, without any discussion beforehand mind you, and messaged my mom to ask, which was more of a demand than anything else, that she move my grandma's requested burial site to be done somewhere else. My aunt also had the audacity to request some of her life insurance money as well as her remaining bank money. At that moment, I watched my mom cry over what her own sister said, who, by the way, did absolutely nothing for my grandma in the last 5 years of her life. When it comes to the aunt who did this, I only saw her once in real life, despite her being only a few hours away, and she had hair that was the same color as my grandma, which was a stunning red. Honestly, all I really remember from her was that she was snappy and rude to everyone, and after that experience, I hope I never have to deal with her ever again. When loved ones pass away, that's when the greedy relatives really start to show who they really are. They start to hold out their hands and demand their share of whatever's left. I know I've seen it in my life, and I'm sure you've seen it in other people as well. It's just really unfortunate that people act like this, especially in such a hard time, such as somebody passing away, leaving everybody they know and love behind. And worst of all, this aunt that's acting like this did nothing to help out with their mom. By what's being described, it really seems like this is someone who just waited and did nothing to help out in a situation where things were starting to fall apart. But instead, they just want to capitalize on life insurance and remaining money in somebody's bank account, which honestly shows so much as to who this person really is. So I think if anything, make sure you spend time with your loved ones, because you honestly never know how much time you have left, and it's honestly better to have no regrets. My boyfriend started making comments about my stomach, and it's making me very insecure now. I've been dating my boyfriend for a little over 2 years. I have been the same weight and size for well over 3 years now. For some background, I've had struggles with my weight in the past, and even at my smallest, I always had a little belly pouch right below my belly button. Like I stated before, when we were dating, I was the same size I am now, and nothing about my body has changed. I am very insecure about my weight though, despite my small size. However, in contrast, my boyfriend has gained about 20 to 25 pounds ever since we've gotten together. He can be insecure about his belly, and I'm always super reassuring, telling him that I think he's very attractive and not to worry about the extra weight. Over the last few months, I've noticed him making comments about my belly while also physically patting it and pointing it out. Not in a super mean way, but still in a way that makes me feel like he doesn't like it. The first couple of times, I thought he was just joking around, but now that it's become consistent, I'm starting to feel really insecure about it. I'm not sure if this is some type of projection on his end, all because his body has changed significantly or something like that, but I just don't know what his deal is. The tipping point for me was yesterday when he made a comment about it, and I said, well, it doesn't look big in this photo photo I just took? He replied and said, yeah, that's just because you're good at hiding it. Honestly, when I heard that, it really hurt my feelings. I have a yearly physical and I get my blood work always checked on time, and I'm in the normal BMI range. I eat loads of fruits and vegetables and have a wide variety of foods in my diet. I also walk 1 to 3 miles a day, so I really don't feel like this is some weird way of him saying he's concerned about my health. He, on the other hand, rarely eats vegetables and has a high diet in pasta, meats, and cheeses. And I'm adding this detail just to reinforce that I don't think he has health on his mind when he's making these comments. I guess I'm just asking, how should I bring this up to him and let him know that his comments are really starting to take a toll on me? Every time he said something, I always question why he's even saying anything in the first place. And he just replies, well, I still love you. So it's like he doesn't understand why I'm questioning his comments because he continues to make these types of comments. What should I do? Your boyfriend is 100% projecting his own insecurities on you. He has gained 20 to 25 pounds, and he is using your own insecurities against you 100%. It's incredibly insulting, to be completely honest, because he probably knows your history of having body image issues. I'm sure that's come up at some point, and it's just really not fair to you because he knows for a fact that this is a problem for you. So basically, he's being a big jerk, and there's no reason for him to act like that. I think honestly, you need to set some serious boundaries with your boyfriend. You need to make it very clear that these comments hurt your feelings, that this is not something you appreciate, and that it makes you feel terrible. Maybe even re-explain your history of having body image issues and how these types of comments bring up previous trauma that you really don't want to have in your life. I'm sure he does love you, but the way he's treating you is really convincing me otherwise. But I honestly hope you get this worked out, and hopefully you can figure out a way to make him stop saying these terrible comments, because you legitimately do not deserve this type of treatment in your life. My girlfriend makes double my salary, but wants to split the rent 50-50, and I'm not sure what to do. My girlfriend and I are going to move in together, and we're looking for some rental apartments. She makes around double my salary. This doesn't bother me. I'm happy that she does well and we love each other a lot. However, when discussing our rent budget, she made it clear that she wants to split rent 50-50. Even living in a cheaper apartment would be difficult for me, as I currently live at home, and it would mean having to make some serious sacrifices just to live together. She is also looking at some nice places that I simply cannot afford. I brought this up, and she said that it would be more equitable if she paid a bit more when it came to the rent, considering she makes much more money than I do, and so it would make sense if we're going to be looking for more expensive places to live. I suggested a 60-40 split, which would give me some room to breathe financially and really not affect her that much. When I suggested this, she basically laughed at this and thought I was joking. When I said I was serious, she said it's only fair that we split everything 50-50. I don't feel entitled to her money, but I am also hurt by her reaction to this, as I would do it for her if the situation was reversed. I feel like she's treating the relationship like a roommate agreement rather than a partnership. I'm not sure how to approach this now, and I feel like a loser bringing it up again. On the other hand, I need to do something, as a 50-50 split would be a genuine struggle for me. All the while, she would essentially have my entire salary as disposable income. My friends have suggested lying to her about the rent and pocketing the difference. I'm obviously not keen on this and would never do it, but I'm at a complete loss on how to move forward from here. What should I do? First off, in my opinion, I think you should ignore your friends and not lie to your girlfriend. By lying about how much the rent is and then trying to pocket the difference, you're basically stealing from her, and that is just wrong. That is simply a one-way ticket to getting broken up. On the other hand, if she really is serious about the whole 50-50 thing, then she needs to get serious that the budget has to match the lowest income. So if your salary is literally twice as less as hers, then you need to look for something that's in your pay range, not in hers. You can't be expected to pay for this stuff that you don't make enough money to pay for. That's just ridiculous. And I'm personally surprised by her reaction of laughing at you when you suggested a 60-40 split. I don't think it sounds that unreasonable, since she makes twice as much money as you, to suggest that she would pay more, since she makes a lot more than you do. I think most of all, I wouldn't sign any kind of lease yet unless you're able to afford it. Worst case scenario, I think you just don't live with her, and honestly, by the way your girlfriend's acting, it doesn't sound like you two are ready to live together. So I wish you the best of luck in this situation, because this sounds like a rough one, because if you're not careful, you're gonna run out of money really quick. My entitled sister completely ignores my boyfriend's medical emergency and demands that I go on a trip with her despite my boyfriend being in so much pain. Here's what happened. So I have two sisters, and both of them are equally entitled, but in completely different ways. This story, however, is about my oldest sister, who's 31 years old. Some important background information is that at this time, my long-distance boyfriend had been staying with me while doing landscaping favors for my mom. We had been dating for a few months, but he had been my friend for years, and my parents both liked him very much. Now, my sister and I had been planning a trip to a nearby city for a few days. It was a very last-minute decision and something I was looking forward to, even if it meant having to follow my sister around all day. My boyfriend was going to stay at my house while I went out for the day, and we were just going to have some sister time. This was all until the day before I was supposed to leave, when my boyfriend became very sick. He was having stomach pain, going in and out of consciousness, and he was convulsing at one point. I told my sister that as soon as he started displaying symptoms, that I may not be able to go. She dismisses my concerns and tells me that he just drank too much and that he will be fine. As a side note, neither of us went drinking the day before. As the day goes on, he just gets worse, and I begged him to let me take him to the ER. However, this was at the start of COVID madness, and he kept refusing, saying that he doesn't want to spend all his parents' money or to catch COVID and risk bringing it back to me. The night comes and he can barely sleep because of the pain. When morning comes, my sister acts as if nothing is wrong and tells me that he will be over it soon. My boyfriend is still very, very sick, and I don't feel comfortable leaving him. I text my sister saying that I will not be able to go, and she absolutely loses her mind. She yells at me about how irresponsible we both are and about how selfish and inconsiderate my decision is. She starts spam calling my parents' house, and eventually my mom steps in and tells me she will handle it. My mom eventually agrees to go with my sister in place of me so they can have a mother and daughter day. Apparently, the entire drive up there, my sister was on the phone with her friend complaining about me while barely speaking a word to my mom. A couple of hours later, my mom arrives home early, and I ask her what happened. Apparently, on our sister trip, where I wasn't allowed to invite my boyfriend or friends because it was meant for us, she had invited 3 of her other friends who I didn't know to meet us there. My mom felt like a third wheel, which is why she left early. Also, my sister's diagnosis of my boyfriend was completely wrong. I mean, honestly, who could have guessed? And he turned out to have a stomach ulcer, which took months of medicine and pain to heal. She never apologized for the way she acted, and after a week of ignoring me, she pretended it never happened. In her mind, she is always the victim. Even when everyone tells her that she's wrong, she says, "You're all ganging up on me." And this is just one of the many reasons why I choose not to talk to her. How entitled can you possibly be, where you not only lie to your sister about the intent of your trip together, but also pretend like someone else's medical emergency is not a good enough reason to skip out of some kind of event? I mean, you have to be really that far gone to act like other people's medical emergencies are not that important just so you can get your way. The entitled sister in this story sounds absolutely spoiled rotten, and I'm honestly utterly surprised that the mom even agreed to go on that trip with this kid. It's clear that this is the kind of kid who would freak out and lose their mind if they don't get their way, which is very clearly obvious with the way she treated this lady's boyfriend. So overall, I completely understand why this original poster doesn't really talk to their older sister much, because I bet it's probably very hard to get anything done when the person you're talking to only thinks about themselves. And honestly, nobody needs that kind of energy in their life. I think my boyfriend has been crying in private when I'm not around. He insists he's fine, but I'm not sure what to do about this. I'm a 25-year-old female, and my boyfriend is 25 as well. We've been together for just under 3 years and have lived together for over a year. He's usually very stoic. I've seen him cry a few times after his father passed away, and have seen him tear up in a gritted teeth sort of way when he's been in a lot of pain, but that's about it. But for the last week or so, I've suspected that he's been crying a lot and trying not to let me see it. The first time I heard what sounded like crying through the door, I knocked and asked if everything was okay, and after a second, he very cheerily responded that it was. Okay, that's fine. Maybe I misheard. Maybe what I thought was crying was actually suppressed laughing at a YouTube video or something. His voice didn't sound like he had been crying after all, so maybe I was mistaken. Then the next day, I walked into the kitchen and he was sitting at the table, head in his hands, definitely crying. But as soon as he heard me, he got up and started talking about dinner. This time, his voice definitely did sound like he had just been crying, and his eyes were visibly red. I asked him if he was okay and if he wanted to talk about anything, but nope, same immediately cheery demeanor. After this basic pattern happened a few more times, I sat him down and told him outright that I had heard him crying, that I was always there if he needed to talk about anything at all, and that I loved him and was starting to get worried, and if he didn't want to talk to me about it, he could at least least talk to someone. Again, I got nothing from him. He was deflecting all over the place with jokes and stuff along those lines, which isn't usually abnormal for him, but this was a serious relationship talk, and he's always been very mature and honest during those. That is, until today when we had this talk. He just kept making jokes through the whole thing. I'm honestly at a complete loss. I've never seen him like this before. As far as I'm aware, there haven't been any recent events in his life that could have caused this. No one passing away or anything like that. Should I just give him space since he clearly doesn't want to talk about it? I love him with all of my heart and want to do whatever's best for him, but I'm seriously worried about his mental health. How should I respect his wishes while making sure he's safe? What should I do? I definitely see this as really alarming. You've been with this guy for 3 years and you've never seen him cry except for maybe a handful of times. And now all of a sudden, anytime you're not there, he's just crying a lot. It seems like something really is going on in his life that is causing him a lot of pain in his life. It's hard to say what it is, and it's hard to say, hey, let me get involved, because I know if I was in his shoes, I probably would not want to tell my significant other about it. As a man myself, I know for a fact that men in general are conditioned at a pretty young age not to cry. We don't show emotions, we don't do anything like that. Any emotions or negative emotions like crying is seen as weak, and you'll be judged for that. I know that I was taught that at a very early age, and honestly, it's a very toxic thing that's very hard to shake. So the fact that your husband was deflecting and choosing not to talk to you openly about his feelings is not that unusual. Unfortunately, that's kind of a society standard that is pushed on kids at an early age in life, where instead of dealing with their emotions, they're told to suck it up and just be a man. So honestly, I think your best bet, if he's not willing to open up, is to just be there for him as best as you can. He's probably going through a lot right now, and you obviously can't make him open up to you, but just giving him some space and being there with him will hopefully make a world of difference in his life. I can also say forcing him to open up to you is not going to work. I know if that was me, that would only push me away even more and make me more guarded about my emotions. So I think just be careful, love him, and be there for him. And hopefully this whole situation gets worked out in the end. Today I messed up by making fun of astrology. Okay, so this happened earlier this morning, and well, I'm pretty bemused by the whole thing. So because it's relevant to the story, I'm an astrophysicist. It's what I do for a job, and honestly, I can't lie, I do laugh at and openly mock nonsense like astrology. But if people want to believe it, they are free to do so. So I had been talking to this girl on WhatsApp that I'd matched with on Tinder. We'd been getting along really quite well, and we're probably going to meet up fairly soon. One day, out of the blue, she asked me for my star sign, stating that she needs it to check our compatibility. When I heard this, it took everything in me not to start laughing, and was honestly a big red flag. I can't quite tell if she's being totally serious, or basically just asking when roughly my birthday was, maybe. So I told her that I'm a Leo, which is exactly what I am, but also included some laugh emojis because whenever anyone mentions star signs, I always think of this stand-up sketch comedian who basically made fun of this that I absolutely love. She asked me why I put the laugh emoji, so I told her about the comedy sketch that makes me laugh anytime someone brings up astrology. In fact, I even sent her the link to the sketch itself. Now in hindsight, I realize now perhaps sending a YouTube link with the title basically trashing astrology to someone who is clearly interested in it is perhaps not the wisest idea, and I had hoped that she would have watched it and just enjoyed the humor. I have no idea if she actually watched it, but I believe she did. Anyway, I got like a one-word reply of cool, and when I replied just a little bit later, I saw that she no longer had her profile picture anymore, and I couldn't see anything. And honestly, I just have to laugh. I officially got blocked. Evidently, she took some offense to what is basically some very tame stand-up comedy, and decided that blocking me as well as ghosting me was her best option. And for me, this is just one of the many reasons as to why I hate online dating. I gotta be honest, I looked it up, and based on your star sign alone, this is exactly what a Leo would do. No, I'm just kidding, that's actually really hilarious. I'm also one of those people that will openly mock astrology at any chance I get, but I'm very careful around family members who do like astrology. Like, the last thing I want to do is hurt anybody's feelings for the stuff that they're interested in. In my opinion, getting into astrology is just about as harmless as picking your Harry Potter house. It's totally fine, nobody gets hurt, and at the end of the day, you might end up with some cool rocks you can put on your mantle. If anything, for this original poster, they probably dodged someone absolutely crazy. I would never want to be with someone who can't take a joke, and obviously they sent them a joke comedy sketch. And instead of finding some relatable humor in it, they decided, nope, I'm out. So good for this guy for chasing off the crazy, and hopefully while they're online dating, they'll try and find someone that matches up with their star sign. Today, I messed up by lying to my girlfriend about hanging out at my friend's house. For some context before we start, my girlfriend does not like my friends. My girlfriend gets very mad very easily and will ignore me and treat me like a stranger when she's mad. So me and my friend finish eating dinner when our group of friends invited us both to catch up and hang out at another friend's house. I wanted to go hang out, but I knew that if I told my girlfriend that I was going, she would get mad at me. Now, I hate when she gets mad at me. She always acts like the victim and generally just gives me the silent treatment until I constantly say I'm sorry. And even then, I have to wait. But I really wanted to go hang out with my friends after a long work week. So I did the stupidest thing I could think of and I lied to her. I told her I was at my relative's house fixing something, which she believed me. But I felt really guilty and I knew it wasn't right. So about 90 minutes into the hangout, I told my girlfriend if it was okay that I go to my friend's house just to hang out. She put two and two together and realized very quickly that I had lied to her. She was immediately super mad at me and rightfully so. So I asked my friend to carpool me home and I left. In total, I spent around 2 hours at my friend's house. When I reached my house, my girlfriend called me. I picked it up and she proceeded to blow up on me, in which I honestly rightfully deserved it. And when I say blow up, I mean that she is screaming at me at the top of her lungs. It's the type of screaming that would make your voice give out. I knew I was at fault. I told her that I only did it so she wouldn't be upset at me, to which she said that she would have been anyways, but this made her 1,000 times madder. She then told me how the only reason I told her was because I felt guilty, to which I said I did and I knew it was wrong. She then said that her opinion doesn't matter and that if I cared about her opinion or her feelings, I would have told her right away. I admit I lied because I got selfish. I didn't want to deal with my girlfriend being upset while hanging out with my friends, so I lied about where I was, and now she said she can't trust me, which absolutely crushed me. I know I lied, and I know I deserve the repercussions, but I did it for a reason, and not for malicious intent. While I don't think you should have lied to your girlfriend about where you were going and the people you were spending time with, it doesn't dismiss the fact that your girlfriend is absolutely insane, and not in a good way. I'm just gonna say it, she straight up treats you like garbage, and she does not care about you. This sounds like a very controlling and manipulative girlfriend who is literally trying to isolate you from your friends. This does not sound like a good person. If I was in your shoes and my girlfriend was screaming at me at the top of my lungs, all because out of a desperate attempt I lied and said that I was doing something else, when in reality I was at my friend's house, there's no way I would stick with her. I would very quickly break up with this lady. She got super angry, like actually screaming mad, all because you spent time with your friends. Like, this is a super toxic relationship that you can do without, to be honest. You don't sound like a bad person just from this post alone. Maybe there's other things going on that we don't know about as the readers, but based on what you have told us, you can do a lot better than this. And it really sucks because it sounds like just from what you've posted, you don't have the guts to break up with her and find somebody else, because nobody in a healthy relationship would have to desperately apologize to their significant other just for them to take them back, all because you went to hang out with your friends. Now, if these friends were super toxic and like a legitimately bad influence on you, I can see where your girlfriend's coming from. But screaming as if you just kicked her dog or ran over her cat is just not the appropriate response to some guy hanging out with his friends at college. Like, that seems like an overreaction. So yeah, you might have messed up with lying, but honestly, I would get out of that relationship because what you're currently dealing with is super toxic and it is not healthy for you in the slightest. My stepmother hates me and I really don't know how to tell my dad. What should I do? When my dad first introduced my stepmom to me when I was 10 years old, she was very nice to me and she looked so happy that we met and hoped that we would get along. They got married when I was 13 years old and I was so happy that me and my dad had a new member of our family. I thought my stepmother and I were getting along really well. That is until a few months after their honeymoon, she told me one morning that we just need to pretend to like each other around my dad, but when he is not here, that I shouldn't even bother her. Honestly, this shattered me, but I agreed because I didn't know what else to do. After that day, whenever it was just me and my stepmother, she would say things to get to me, and I would just not say anything. I'm introverted, and I don't like confrontation, so I just took it and thought over time she would get over it, but it only honestly got worse. She would talk about my height, my weight, and say I was just a funny-looking version of my dad. I hope my dad would notice, but he didn't. He actually thinks me and my stepmother are really close, and that she understands me. He looks so happy with her that I thought maybe it's just not worth saying anything and just giving it some time. This year, my stepmother has started picking on me around my dad, and he has either joined in or just completely ignored it. I have voiced that what she says makes me uncomfortable, as well as hurts my feelings, but my dad says she is just teasing and doesn't mean to hurt me. Well, right now I'm just about at the end of my patience, and I'm scared, I'm angry, and just frustrated at my stepmother and my dad. My dad was away for work, and it was just me and my stepmom at home, and she had a party at home with a couple of her friends. I went ahead and helped set up the house and cook dinner as well because my dad asked me to help out, which is fine, I don't mind. After they ate and just hung out, they were spending time out on the porch when I heard my stepmom and her friends talk very loud outside my window while I was in my room. My stepmom's friends talked about how lucky my stepmom was to have such a nice husband and a nice house. When they mentioned how nice it was that I cooked for them, my stepmother told them that I was annoying and weird and that she hated me and hated living with me and couldn't wait until I was 18 years old so she could kick me out. I was shocked that she hated me that much, but I didn't know why. To be honest, I thought we were tolerating each other really well, but I must have done something for her to just hate me. But honestly, I can't think of what I did. I've been down since that day, which was about 2 weeks ago, and I thought I would get past the initial feelings, but today I burst into tears. I cried so much that I'm still sitting in my car trying to process all of this. I'm trying to get some kind of advice on how to talk to my dad about this because I'm scared about how he will react. I don't want my dad to be sad because he does so much for me, but I'm not strong like him. I'm really struggling. My question is, how can I approach this conversation with my dad about my stepmother hating me? Or should I even tell him at all? What should I do? I can tell you right now that unless you record your stepmother making these comments about you, he probably won't believe you. He obviously dismissed anything you said about her making you feel uncomfortable by making degrading comments about you, but if there's some kind of video or audio evidence, then that will literally be the only thing that will convince him otherwise. You have somebody who's trying to derail your life. She has made it abundantly clear that she does not like you, and that when you turn 18, she's going to kick you out of the house. And honestly, from my perspective, the only way to get him to believe you is to have some actual evidence, because otherwise she's just gonna lie, and it's only going to get worse. So I wish you the best of luck, and hopefully this works out in your favor. My boyfriend has lost complete interest in me, and he doesn't want to admit it or talk about it. What should I do? So for the past few days, he has been acting very distant with me and doing things that really makes me think that he's lost interest in me, such as randomly disappearing for 1 to 2 hours without warning, and when he finally texts me back again, he doesn't even tell me he missed me or bother to explain to me what he was doing, or even just giving me a message saying that he was sorry he couldn't reply but that he missed me or something. These days, he has been out with his friends and not texted or called me at all. While he was out and not on his phone, I wrote him long and cute messages about how much I miss him, because we always text each other cute things about how much we miss each other, even if one of us is not on our phone. But he ignored every cute thing I wrote him and only replied with something dry like, "Sorry, my phone died." And then he disappears again without any explanation or even a sorry, and it's becoming a normal thing now. The old him would have texted me something like, "Baby, I have 10%, my phone will die, so don't think I'm ignoring you. I'll miss you, I love you, and I'll be home soon." It would be the small things that mean the most to me, but recently he stopped doing those things, and he stopped making me feel like I'm important. I wrote him long paragraphs about how I felt, and he replied with something really short and dry, like saying, "Oh no, that's not true," claiming that he just wasn't on his phone, and it's like I can never tell him how I feel because he's always just gonna act like it's nothing, and it's like he's not even reading what I wrote because he sends these super short replies. What should I do? It honestly seems like the original poster in this story is being incredibly obsessive of their boyfriend. I'm sure at the beginning of the relationship it was probably this cute thing where it's like, "Oh yeah, let's text all the time. Of course I'm not ignoring you, I've just set 10%. But after a while that behavior got really old really quick. Like this guy can't go 1 to 2 hours without texting his girlfriend, as well as his girlfriend thinking, "Oh no, he's lost interest in me," when in reality he's probably just doing other stuff for the day. Like keeping up that behavior would probably be exhausting from the boyfriend's standpoint, especially when this is your girlfriend's mentality. "Oh, he didn't text me the way he normally does. He must be losing interest in me." Like that's really crazy if you ask me. Someone disappearing disappearing for a few hours because they're doing other things doesn't mean that they're drifting away from you. If anything, it probably just means they're being a normal human being and getting stuff done. Like the fact that you expect him to talk to you 24/7 and somehow assume that that's normal is enough proof for me to say that the original poster in this situation is being extremely clingy. And that's just really, really obnoxious in my opinion. If I was in this relationship, I would be very unhappy. And I would probably make room for some space in my life. Otherwise, I would feel completely suffocated. Like this behavior of checking in with your girlfriend every minute of every day and sending these super cute detailed messages is legitimately not possible to maintain in a relationship. I don't know, maybe there's someone out there that does have a long-term relationship like that where they're able to maintain that cute attitude from the beginning all the way till now. If you're one of those people, let us know in the comments. But overall, I can't imagine having to text my significant other like that every time, or else they're gonna think that I don't like them anymore. So in all honesty, I think the original poster needs to chill out and stop being so obsessive over how their boyfriend is texting them. Because chances are he probably still does like you. But if you keep pushing it and if you keep assuming that he doesn't like you, then you're probably only gonna drive him away. My crazy ex-girlfriend goes absolutely berserk when she finds out that I went on a vacation trip that she has always dreamed of without her, saying that we could have gone together as friends. And now because of her, all of my friends are starting to turn on me. And I'm honestly not sure what to do. Here's what happened. My ex-girlfriend and I were together for almost 3 years. She always dreamed of taking a vacation to a country she loves. So for our 3-year anniversary, I wanted to surprise her with this vacation. But she ended up breaking up with me about 2 months before the trip because according to her, we weren't working out anymore as a couple. It was really hard for me, but there was nothing else to do other than respect her decision. So I accepted the breakup and moved on with my life. At the end, the breakup was pretty amicable, but I still paid for the trip I was planning to take with her. My first plan, honestly, was to get a refund, but I would lose almost half of what I paid for because most of the planned activities weren't refundable. About a month after the breakup, I reconnected with an old friend and we hit it off. We started talking more frequently and started spending more time together, but kept everything very casual. I was still stuck with the trip I booked, and instead of losing half the money, I decided to ask my friend if she wanted to take this trip with me, and she agreed. We ended up taking the trip together, and it honestly was a great time. I didn't really tell anybody about this, or post anything on social media at all, really. On the other hand, my friend did the opposite, and ended up putting a lot of pictures up on her social media feed. And because of this, my ex found out that I took this trip with my friend instead of her. When we returned from the trip, I got a call from my ex-girlfriend saying that I hurt her feelings for doing something she always wanted with another woman, and that we could have taken the trip as friends, whatever that means. I just told her that we are no longer together, and further explained that I did not owe her this in the slightest, and that I have moved on. Because of this, my ex-girlfriend started talking, and I ended up getting flamed by our mutual friend for being an insensitive jerk, and for not taking her feelings into consideration, even though she's the one that dumped me 2 months before our trip. How can that possibly be my fault? I feel like this is a lot of unnecessary drama for no reason. I honestly don't want these friendships of the past few years to break up because of my breakup. What is the best way to deal with this situation here? What should I do? How obnoxious of your girlfriend to not only break up with you 2 months before this trip, but to then turn around and try and pretend she has some say over who you can and cannot bring on this trip. I mean, that's just disgusting. It's also incredibly rude and just so inappropriate. She has no say in the matter. She broke up with you, not the other way around. This lady actually thought that they could have gone on this trip as friends. I mean, come on, that's ridiculous. If my girlfriend broke up with me and then still demanded to go to, I don't know, Disney World together, and if I somehow agreed to that, I would be miserable. I spent all that money just for someone to be with me who does not love me? No way in the world you can get out and leave. Like, this ex literally can't expect you to take her to such a vacation that you paid for, by the way, as friends after she broke up with you. That would honestly ruin any semblance of an attempt that you would have to try and cope with the situation in which your ex broke up with you. And honestly, that must have been so awkward trying to find somebody else to go with you on this stupid trip. And also, as a side note, the fact that this friend is freaking out on you is more than enough proof that they are not a mutual friend, but instead are very much on the side of your ex-girlfriend. And I really don't think you need that in your life. So yeah, if your crazy ex-girlfriend really is this upset about you going on a trip that you paid for, you can always kindly remind her that she did this to herself and that if she's unhappy with her decisions and the way things turned out, she only has herself to blame. I moved in with my friend's boyfriend, and at first he seemed nice, but now he's very rude. How do I handle this situation? My friend and I are pretty close. We're not best friends, but we have a good relationship with each other and have known each other for 6 years. My friend is now engaged with her boyfriend, but they don't live with each other because she lives in a different state and they do long distance dating. While I was looking for a room, my friend's boyfriend, whom I didn't know before but was only semi-close with, happened to have a spare bedroom for me to rent. My friend's boyfriend seemed alright from the few times I hung out with him, so I decided to move in for a little while. At first, the guy seemed fine and pretty nice while I was living there. His mother and father were nice too, but slowly as I hung out with him more, he started making ruder comments to me, and I started noticing that he had a tendency to sort of be rude to other people as well, in front as well as behind their backs. For example, he would make really nasty comments about the fact that I'm still single, saying stuff like, "Don't take dating advice from her, she's 27 and still single." He also keeps pushing me to get together with some of his friends, which honestly makes me incredibly uncomfortable. He also mocks me by saying I'm a loner, and even says that he wants to see what I'm like when I'm angry and mad. He and his friend group seem to have fun choosing to pick on someone whenever they hang out, and it honestly seems pretty toxic and hurtful, especially to whoever gets chosen to get picked on that day. The things they make fun of is usually about their weight and their singleness. I also noticed that he seems very two-faced. For example, after his engagement party, he talked about a mutual friend of ours, saying that she was old and still single. I felt bad because the girl came to his engagement party to congratulate him and even bought flowers. But despite all that, he was saying really nasty things about her behind her back. So I need advice on how to handle this awkward relationship with my friend's boyfriend, who is unfortunately my roommate. I'm planning to move out, and I decided I definitely don't like the boyfriend, but I still like my friend. Should I just pretend that everything is alright until I move out, or should I give him a bit of the cold shoulder to hopefully get him to stop bothering me? I don't want to confront him because I'd rather just not interact with him anymore. Also, should I even go to their wedding? I really don't want to, but I feel bad because I feel like my friend is expecting me, but she doesn't know that I hate her boyfriend. What should I do? I think the fact that you understand that you need to move out is a huge first step. Too often people have crappy roommates and they think to themselves, "Oh, I can't leave. Like, this is where I live and this is just my life now. I gotta put up with it." When instead, you could very easily get rid of these people from your life and find a happier life in front of you. There's no reason for you to put up with this, and the way he's talking to you is completely inappropriate. If the moving date is further than usual, then I would give him the cold shoulder. But if I'm about to move out of that house and I have the opportunity, you can bet I'm gonna tell him exactly how I feel. Bottling up that kind of emotion and just letting it simmer is only gonna make you hate your friend. And it's honestly going to be your roommate's fault overall. I think also it might be a good thing to let your friend know exactly how he is behind closed doors. He mocks and belittles people because they are or are not in a relationship. He makes fun of people's weight, and he has said some pretty ridiculous, terrible slurs in the past that I intentionally left out of this story that are incredibly terrible and not something anybody would want to deal with. Just imagine how your friend is going to feel if after 6 months of her living with this guy, he starts treating her like this. Wouldn't you want to know ahead of time that your future husband is actually a piece of garbage? I know I would. So yeah, depending on the timing of your moving out, there's a lot of ways you can handle this, but hopefully however you do handle it, it works out and you are able to get away from this terrible roommate. I went through something very scary last night and my boyfriend couldn't be there for me. And now I'm irrationally upset at him and I don't know what to do. Last night I was being followed on foot in the dark in an unfamiliar area for close to an hour by a man in his 50s. It was blatant and very scary, even though he didn't try to talk to me or do anything except follow me. I tried to call my boyfriend for comfort or for advice, or at least to have someone who would know what was happening, but he was at a movie and his phone was off. I tried to text and call my friends in my group chat, but none of them answered. I was walking around aimlessly for a while, trying to shake off the guy because I didn't want him to know where I was staying. At the time, I was in an Airbnb alone for 2 weeks in the middle of nowhere while my condo undergoes repairs, but eventually I speed walked back to the Airbnb. As I was getting in, one of my friends called me back and calmed me down for 30 minutes on the phone. An hour and a half later, my boyfriend finally called, but all he did was ask if I was okay and that if I was safe. Once I confirmed that I was okay, he went ahead and just hung hung up the phone. Our call was 30 seconds. I guess it's because he had just gotten out of the movie, but it makes me feel like he doesn't care. What's upsetting me the most though is the fact that he didn't answer the phone. I know he didn't know that I was calling because his phone was off, and I know there's no reason to be angry at him, but it made me feel really alone and very unsafe and uncared for. I don't know how to get past this feeling, even though I know it's irrational. Should I just give it time, or should I tell him how I feel? What should I do? You know when your girlfriend looks at you after waking up and saying, "I had a dream you cheated on me," and then gets pissed off about you in this dream? This sounds like that. Why on earth would you try and call everybody under the sun besides the police because some guy's following you around for an hour? If that's really what was going on, you should have called the police. Like, that is literally who you should have called first. Instead, you called everybody else for some reason, and now you're upset that your boyfriend didn't have his phone on at a movie theater and didn't call you back? I mean, what exactly did he do wrong? Sure, he just got out of a movie theater and he only called you for 30 seconds to check up on you, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't care. I think you're just overreacting in this situation. The original poster in this story, by the way, is 25 years old, and I would honestly hope at this age you would be more independent and able to take care of yourself. Even if you did get in contact with your boyfriend, there's literally nothing he could have done. By the time he even got there, this guy probably still would have been following you around. In contrast, police officers could have been there within minutes. You should have called the police immediately. In fact, when you got back to the Airbnb, you should have done that immediately as well. It doesn't matter how awkward or how uncomfortable you may have felt, call them anyways. You quite literally put yourself in danger by choosing to call everybody and their mother for over an hour instead of the very people that could save your life. Which, by the way, this could have been a lot worse, but it sounds like you understand that it's very irrational for you to be upset with your boyfriend, and I think it's the fact that the phone call only lasted 30 seconds, and I think that that's what's really upsetting you, combined with the fact that you feel very vulnerable and scared, which is totally valid, by the way, but to take it out on your boyfriend is just not the right move in my opinion. I think if anything, talk to him and explain to him, "Hey, I went through this really traumatic thing, and I really need you to be there for me right now." If you explain it like that, he will absolutely come to your side, and he will be there for you. So yeah, I wouldn't take this out on your boyfriend. He didn't do anything wrong, and next time you're in a sketchy situation like that, and time is on your side to get away from this weirdo, just call the police. Otherwise, things could have ended very poorly. My boyfriend plays video games all day, and I feel like my attraction is dwindling down. What should I do? So my boyfriend that I've been with for a year left his old job about a month and a half ago. He used to work 12-hour shifts and bring in a lot of money, but it was a toxic work environment, so he left. He can't work or make any money right now because he isn't eligible to do so under the law in the country which we live in. He unfortunately doesn't have an open work permit, so from the minute he wakes up until he goes back to sleep, he's playing video games, and will be doing this until September when he hopefully gets admitted to start school. He still gives me attention intermittently, and we go out on the weekends, but I can't help but feel like my attraction to him is going down because of it. On top of that, he doesn't have an income coming in anymore, other than his parents graciously helping us out, and this is possibly going to be going on for 2 years. So I'm responsible for a lot more financially. I understand he's not able to work, but I saw him as a person that would want to do other things that help him grow as a person, especially during this time off. I'm not against playing video games, and I get that he needs his rest after working so hard, but playing video games all day, every day, I feel is a little excessive after a month and a half. My question is, I don't want to get between him and his games, but I was wondering if approaching him about this would be helpful. What should I do? I think in this situation, your feelings are totally valid, and him constantly gaming is kind of a turnoff. Like, that's completely understandable. I think having an honest conversation with him about it and saying, "Hey, this is not okay, and I really don't like who you're becoming," is completely rational and not stepping over any kind of line in my opinion. I'm sure you miss the hardworking man who used to work 12-hour shifts and bring in all this money, so for him to change suddenly into this guy who just sits around and plays video games all day is probably very jarring. On that same side of it, this guy probably has never had the chance to play video games like this in a very long time. Just imagine working 12 hours every day at a company that treats you like garbage and facilitates a toxic work environment. As someone who has been in that situation before, I would probably want to play video games all the time as well. Maybe this is a case where things got out of hand pretty quickly and he's in a really bad habit and he might not realize it entirely. So sitting down and having a conversation with him and talking to him about what's going on in his life, I think would be really helpful for both of you in the long run. My brother has has been drifting away from family and his mental health is going downhill fast, which all honestly seems to be connected to his girlfriend. What should I do? My brother has always been reasonably introverted. For the years of adulthood prior to his relationship, and even for the first year-ish of it, I would say that we had a pretty good relationship. He moved in with her out of my parents' house relatively quickly, and the house he moved into is extremely close to them. They had a bit of a strained relationship with him immediately prior to him leaving, and throughout our lives, I've definitely noticed a bit of a personality clash between a type A parent and a more laid-back child. The girl is very antagonistic towards myself and my partner, becomes greatly irritable and defensive if we ask her clarifying questions in a normal conversational manner. She is the definition of a keyboard warrior and seems to think of herself as a martyr for the mentally ill. She has a new job in the mental health and addictions field. She also always asks to leave right in the middle of dinner as well as family gatherings, completely disregarding the fact that the meal was specifically made to go around her dietary restrictions. I've watched her belittle my brother at family gatherings, plan his life out loud for him in front of us, lecture him about going to the doctor, doing X, Y, and Z, complain about his friends, and paint them as horrible people who alienated him, and coax him into only hanging out with her friends. When they are in the same room, they sit on completely opposite sides of the room and don't look at each other. He stares at the floor and barely responds to us when we try to include him in the conversation at family gatherings. His presentation is obviously signifying that he is depressed and defeated. She went away over the holidays last year, and that was the first time I had seen my brother make eye contact with me or my parents, let alone laugh or talk about hanging out with one of his friends in at least a year. He currently isn't working because he has to pass a test to be certified to work, and my parents have been partially supporting him financially. He was diagnosed with ADHD, and suddenly he behaves as though he is incapable of functioning in a classroom or even writing tests, even though he has now completed a degree and did quite well. It makes me wonder if he wants to work in the field at all. It also begs the question of whether or not he is just used to his girlfriend's family's wealth, as well as them semi-supporting him, and just doesn't have the drive because of that. Or if this has something to do with being a mental health martyr, and he has convinced himself that his ADHD is so disabling that he is delaying taking any kind of tests and moving forward with his life. I confronted him recently about ignoring my text messages, as well as avoiding the family and only contacting me when it's convenient for him. He said it's because of his concerns with money and that he's just too stressed out. I asked him if he was allowed to answer any kind of messages on his own, because I've had a hunch that this girl reads his messages, and that's why he doesn't answer them or have contact with his friends and family. After I asked him this, he would not directly answer me. He got incredibly nervous and started to skirt around the issue, and this only makes me think that this girl screens his text messages. And this isn't even close to everything. This also leaves out the drama where she already had beef with his friend group in the first place, so there's already a bad history there just to start. I typically like to keep the time I have around my brother chill, so I don't push him away, but he's already being pushed away. How do I deal with this or even approach this issue in the first place? I have told my parents that I believe she is hurting him and keeping him away from us, but I'm wondering if further steps need to be taken. Do I just need to learn how to deal with him being away from the family? How much do I keep trying to be in contact with him if he rarely even answers? What should I do? It obviously sounds like that this girlfriend is not a good fit, and that instead of being a supportive person in this guy's life, she's instead driving him away from his family and friends, which by the way is very toxic. Unfortunately though, there's not a lot you really can do in this situation, besides being really open with your brother and trying to be there for him. If the text messages that you send to him are being screened by his girlfriend, then by all means do not bring up anything about his girlfriend. She's gonna see it and treat him even worse. I think if anything, maybe pull him aside and have a private conversation about it. That might be your best bet, but any kind of written communication will most likely be intercepted by his girlfriend. And if she's as bad as you think she is, then those conversations will only make things worse. So even though he can't be in your life more because of his girlfriend, you can make the decision to make a better effort at being more in his life. Even if the girlfriend doesn't like it, it might be your best bet to show him that, hey, you can get out of this relationship, and yes, there is family and friends available that do love you. Because if this lady really is as bad as you say she is, then I'm positive that your brother really is depressed, and he could definitely use the support right about now. My fiance hasn't been helping with anything for the past 2 years, and I don't don't know if we should be together anymore. What should I do? I have been with my fiance for 8 years. We have a child together and we're currently staying with family. We have had our ups and downs like normal couples do, and I've stuck by him through all of it. For the past 2 years though, he's been blaming everything on me. He doesn't help with the cleaning, he doesn't help with our child, he doesn't really do anything except play video games and hang out with his friends. I've been trying to help him find a job, but he doesn't want to work. He then complains that I'm not making enough money and I need a better job, but won't take me to interviews. As a side note, I currently don't drive. He doesn't come home until early hours of the morning, claiming he only left a couple of hours ago, so he doesn't see what the big deal is. He then proceeds to sleep all day while I'm at work, so I have to find someone else to watch our child. I told him that we needed to talk this morning before work, but he went to sleep instead, so now I have to wait even longer just to talk to him. I honestly don't know what to do. I want to tell him that I don't think we should be together anymore, but then I'll have nowhere to go. I'll have to sleep in the same house as him just so I can see my child. I don't want to take her away from the only family she really knows. I don't know what to do in this situation, as I really don't want to throw away an 8-year relationship. It's very surprising to me that this guy doesn't want to work, even though both of you are engaged and you had a child together already. Like, that is a really bad sign. And the fact that he's not willing to step up and help take care of your child, but instead just wants to sleep and lay around all day is not okay. And that is most definitely a conversation that both of you need to have. And this is not easy. You've been with this guy for 8 years, not even to mention the kid you had together. There's obviously some deep-seated history here that you can't just ignore. And it really would be sad for your kid not to have a father-type figure in their life, because they honestly deserve to have a happy family. But from the sounds of it, your fiance is not putting in the work. So I wish you the best of luck in having this conversation with him, because hopefully he can get his act together and start supporting you and taking care of your child, because otherwise I can definitely see this falling apart, and I don't think either of you want that. An entitled Karen stops me on the side of the road demanding that I sell her my dog while also refusing to take no for an answer. And when she wouldn't stop and leave me alone, I ended up having to put her in her place. Here's what happened. My partner and I have 2 dogs, and just like my 2.5-year-old, we essentially consider them children. My parents have always called them their grandpuppies, and we've done everything we can to ensure that they live happy lives. Arlo is the eldest and is a blue mantle Great Dane. He is beautiful, loving, and basically Scooby-Doo with different coloring. Our other dog by the name of Daphne is our second eldest, and she's a mutt essentially. Her dad was a German Shepherd, and her mom was a Rottweiler mix. My partner saw Daphne and immediately fell in love with her. She is our smart middle child who is the reason the front screen door is always locked, because she can literally open it. And yes, she was named Daphne after my partner tried and failed to get Arlo to be called Scooby. Anyways, my partner was taking Arlo and Daphne for a walk. I had gone halfway with them before heading back home as our toddler had fallen asleep. And if I didn't, we would have been up until 10 o'clock at night with that danger nap. He continued on, and as he was passing the local school, a car pulls up in the middle of the road. My partner wonders what's going on, thinking that maybe there was just something up ahead and the driver wanted to warn them about it. The window rolls down and it's some lady staring at our dogs. The woman points at Arlo and goes, "How much?" My partner is obviously very confused at this point. Why would a stranger pull up in the middle of the road asking how much our dog is? Arlo didn't have a for sale sign on him, so my partner replies, "He's not for sale." But the woman doesn't take that as an answer. She says, "No, really, how much is he?" My partner then reiterated, "I'm sorry, he's not for sale." They go back and forth like this for a few rounds, with her asking how much and my partner clearly stating that we are not selling Arlo. This entitled Karen then says one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life. She says, everything is for sale for the right price." When this lady said this, my partner was instantly enraged. This woman wasn't taking no for an answer, and now is insinuating that money is worth more than the love we have for our dog. My partner then said, "Listen, lady, I don't know how much clearer I have to be. He is not for sale. He will never be for sale. We know he's beautiful. beautiful, and you're not the first person to think this or to tell us this. But for the love of God, if we wanted to make money off of him, we would breed him instead of getting rid of him. So get lost. He was absolutely fuming when he got home and told me about this. Neither of us could believe that someone could be so entitled to think that they could stop in the middle of the road and try and buy someone else's dog. Because at the end of the day, these dogs are more than just dogs. We consider them family, and no amount of money would ever make us sell a member of our family, especially not to some entitled Karen on the side of the road. The anger this makes me feel is indescribable. I can't imagine selling my beloved pet to someone else simply because they're saying, oh, everything has a price. Like, that's just ridiculous to me. How entitled do you actually have to be to stop on the side of the road to do that to somebody? That's so offensive and just so disgusting and gross. So good for both of you for deciding to put your foot down and say, no, we are not going to sell a member of our family, because there is not a price tag you can put on the love of a family member, even if that family member just happens to be a dog. An entitled Karen goes off on me saying she's going to use her dash cam footage to expose me on social media, claiming that I sold her faulty hardware. So I had this keyboard that I bought and was selling online. It sat on there for a while before this weird lady messaged me and wanted to buy it. So I arranged a place to meet up close to my house, but not close enough to where she would know exactly where I live. Because, you know, sketchy people. So I went down to our meetup and I walk up to her car, and it was fairly nice. Just some lady with some tattoos, and I was telling her some things about the keyboard that I was selling. For a disclaimer, I said to her before we even met up that it might not work for consoles, because of course, consoles can be iffy with keyboards. So she bought the keyboard for $80, and I got it on sale for $35, so I got a big profit out of it. So a couple of days later, I get a text from this lady that goes on and on about how I sold her this keyboard when it doesn't even work. Which, keep in mind, it does work. I used it before I sold it to her. I told her that it could be iffy on consoles and reminded her that I previously told her that, but to no avail, as she tells me she tried it on her Apple computer and told me that it didn't work. I said, well, I don't know what to tell you. I told you it might not work for what you want. She then proceeded to tell me that she was going to post me all over social media and that she had a dash cam that had a video on it and she captured the entire thing. Now, obviously, this didn't scare me because, for one, I was wearing a mask, and two, I could care less if some weird entitled Karen tries to judge me on social media. She demanded a refund from me, and I told her flat out, I'm not giving you a refund because you're not entitled to it, for one, and also I already spent it, so there's no money to give back to you anyways. So long story short, she bought an $80 keyboard that I warned her might not work for the console. I made a profit and still don't know if she posted me on social media, but I had a good laugh about it, and hopefully I'll find that video one day. It's funny how you can explain to someone over and over again something might not work the way they think it will, and yet they still ignore it and then freak out when that very thing happens. I guess the keyboard that this lady bought was not exactly what she was supposed to be using for her computer, which is fine, sometimes it works out like that, but the fact that she tried to blame this on the seller itself is just absolutely ridiculous. And also, this lady's a moron for buying something over social media. Like, go to an actual vendor and get something new. Don't buy something on social media and then complain, oh, it doesn't work. Like, that is literally the bottom of the barrel, in my opinion, when it comes to purchasing any kind of electronic goods. Because it's already been in somebody's hands and they have already used it for who knows how long. So why not just buy something new for yourself? Or at least buy something where you know for a fact it's going to work on your computer. Because otherwise, you're going to be out $80 and wish that you had just spent that money on something new. My friend and former colleague gave me a bad work reference, and honestly, I'm still in shock. I met my friend, who I'm going to call Sarah, about 8 years ago. That's not her real name. But we actually knew each other on a personal level prior to then, but hadn't spoken in many years. When we started working together again, totally coincidentally, we were very excited. We ended up working on some major projects together that were very successful. We moved on to other places, but have stayed in touch on a personal level ever since. And I thought she was one of my best friends. Since we work so closely together, I have used her as a reference for some jobs. I don't list her as a supervisor, of course, but as a colleague, and I've never had any issue that I know of. I recently applied for a new job that I'm in the finals for. I might contextualize that lately her career is not really going as she'd like, but I would say some of it is her choice. She doesn't want to work full-time, refuses to go in office, and so because of this, a lot of the jobs that she's had are are very menial, with work more akin to data entry and other things along those lines. And honestly, she complains about it a lot. Overall, as a friend, I try to be sympathetic as best that I can. I don't know if this has anything to do with the following events, but she also recently had a baby and has quit all her jobs, and as far as I know, does not plan to go back to work. I don't see how her husband makes enough to support both of them, especially in this economy, but I guess they figured it out, which is fine. I don't care. I just don't know if she's feeling a certain way about it, and I obviously would never comment on that, as it's not my place to do so. Anyway, apparently my references for this new job I'm up for got flagged for something. I asked for a status update because it seemed to be taking longer than expected, and they said one of my references raised concerns, and so they were personally reaching out to all 5 of my references to have a meeting with them just to clarify some things. I was shocked and didn't know what to think. Which of my references could have possibly given me a bad reference? I messaged her because we message all the time casually and said I was super confused and was trying to figure out who could have said something bad. She was like, well, I hope it wasn't mine. I tried to be innocuous, and then forwarded me the email she sent. The reference that she gave was not good. The things that stuck out to me was her saying things like, I often find frequent typos and editing errors in her writing, not for lack of knowing better, but out of carelessness. Which frankly isn't true in a work environment. It's true when we chat all day, but not at work. And writing, proofreading, editing is one of the main aspects of the job, so I know it's going to be an issue. There are other things that I don't feel like getting into, but it was all things that I don't know why you would write if you had agreed to give a reference for someone, unless you were so convinced that this person was such a terrible person that you had to warn them against hiring them. I'm honestly just so shocked and completely hurt that I don't know what to say. I did tell her that I think this is going to be an actual issue for me getting my job, and all she had to say was, sorry, I didn't know what to put down. These surveys are weird. Can I even salvage this friendship? Like, is this callousness, stupidity, or something worse? What can I say to her to make it clear that this is beyond just LOL, my bad? I'm honestly just so shocked and questioning everything about our friendship. This person is not your friend. They are literally sabotaging your attempt at getting a better job, all because they're probably jealous or have some kind of grudge against you. Not because of anything you did, but more so because they have some kind of envy about your position. That's my guess, at least. Who on earth would act like this, especially somebody you consider a friend? She knew what kind of job you were going out for, so she specifically said things that would somehow take apart and ruin your credibility towards this job. I mean, this is absolutely deliberate and very malicious, and in my opinion, completely unforgivable. I would cut this lady off completely and entirely, like tomorrow. There is absolutely no way I would let that slide. Like, your supposed friend is a terrible person, and it sucks that she showed her true colors right when it counts. I mean, you would chat with this lady and spend a lot of time sending messages and getting to know her, and it's absolutely unacceptable for her to try and blindside you like that. Absolutely awful, and honestly, your instincts are spot on. I would literally never talk to her again, cut my losses, and know to never use her for anything else ever again. It also makes me wonder what other situations she has actively tried to ruin for you. Like, there's always the possibility that she's been doing this for years behind your back, and this is the only time that it's ever come up. Other employment opportunities have probably passed you up in the past, potentially because this lady keeps getting in the way. So yeah, cut her off, get rid of this lady, and find a better reference. Because if she truly cared and if she really was a friend, she would not be actively trying to ruin your career. My roommates hate when my boyfriend comes over, and honestly, I'm not sure what to do about it. I've been with my boyfriend for 3 years and have lived with these people for 2 years, so it's nothing really new. They were nice to him when we first moved in, but after about a year, they suddenly became really bitter towards him and would refuse to even speak to him or even acknowledge his existence. Yet they were still nice and friendly to me. I had a discussion about it with them before in the past, to which they agreed to at least be cordial and say hi back since it bothered me. But when asked what the issue was and if he did something to upset them, they would say that they simply don't click with him. I was a little upset because it felt very immature. My boyfriend would literally only ever say hi to them, and we'd go off to my bedroom. He would never linger around them long enough to say anything to really bother them, and would just be cordial and say hi, to which they always met him with silence or clear annoyance on their faces. If he ever did try to start a conversation in the past, they would always look at each other first, but never even even give him the dignity of a response, which was absolutely ridiculous and rude in my opinion. I know they don't owe him anything, but I at least expected them to be cordial with him. I'm not expecting anything in-depth or some kind of deep-seated friendship. Just be nice. And he only comes over on Friday and Saturday, which my roommates and I agreed was fair, since a big issue in the past was he overstayed his welcome. He stayed over for 1 week because his apartment was getting fumigated last minute, so he had to have a place to stay. But whenever he is over, it's like a switch flips. All of a sudden, my roommates seem really frustrated with me, as well as him all over again. My boyfriend and I always try and stay out of the way and just hang out in my room for the majority of the time he's over. But it seems that him just being here in particular is just a trigger for my roommates, more specifically the one that's 37. This specific roommate never communicates her issues to me, but just gives me the cold shoulder until my other roommate speaks up for her, which drives me nuts. If I ask what's wrong, she'll tell me it's nothing, and I'm just left guessing. Half the time I really can't tell what she's genuinely thinking, or if she's mad at me or not. She'll smile to my face 1 minute, then ignore me the next. It's honestly really confusing. And at this point, I'm honestly at a loss. I don't know what to do. Neither of my roommates leave the house much at all, except to get groceries, and they very rarely ever have anyone over. They pretty much stay in their rooms all day or watch anime together all the time, which I enjoy and sometimes watch with them too. Because of this, they have formed a very close bond with each other, and this can make them a bit cliquey at times, especially when my boyfriend is around. On the off chance they might have one friend over, I've noticed they are both respectful and very engaging of the other's company, which kind of upsets me. This entire situation seems very unfair, and I'm honestly not sure what to do. Your roommates are acting very, very immature. The way they're acting and the fact that they can't communicate, even when both of them are over the age of 30, is absolutely ridiculous. If they really don't like something about this lady's boyfriend, then they need to say something, and then the issue can be addressed. But nothing can get done if you don't say something. Honestly, this type of behavior drives me nuts. When someone gives you the cold shoulder, and then when you try and investigate and be like, okay, wait a second, what's going on here? And then this person says nothing's wrong. Well then congratulations, I can't fix whatever's bothering you, even though your behavior says otherwise. It is absolutely ridiculous when people act like this, because it's unfair for everybody involved. You're clearly and obviously holding some kind of grudge towards them, and you're doing nothing to try and fix it. So you would rather everybody in the house be miserable, all at the expense of you being selfish and not properly communicating. Now, I'm not saying that this boyfriend doesn't have things to work on. Maybe it really does upset them that every Friday and Saturday he's gonna be there, and they have to put up with that. Even from the sounds of what we've been described, it doesn't sound like he does anything to make anybody upset. I think just him being there is pissing these people off, which in and of itself is really ridiculous. It'd be different if he said something offensive or if he did something to anger them. But if these roommates truly just sit in their room and watch anime all day, then seriously, what's the problem? I think an obvious solution to this problem, though, is maybe go to your boyfriend's place. Your roommates are acting like 13-year-olds. There's no reason for you to bring your boyfriend over there. You've tried communicating with them. You have tried to find some kind of common ground. You've tried to find out, okay, what is actually going on, but nothing is working because they're acting like toddlers. So in my opinion, just go to your boyfriend's house from here on out. It's simply not worth having to deal with these homebodies who rarely socialize. And sure, they don't have to be friends with them, but to have some kind of secret grudge against him simply because is absolutely ridiculous and not something you should have to deal with. But what would you do in this situation? Leave a comment down below. We would love to hear it. I am setting new guest boundaries after my extended family overstays their welcome and abuses my generosity. Here's what happened. I work from home full-time. Our home has 4 bedrooms. The master bedroom where my husband and I sleep, a room with a twin bed for each of our children, and my office. In the past, my workspace doubled as a guest room. This became more and more unstable as I began to pick up more and more hours, coupled with friends and extended family members that came to stay on average once every 2 weeks. It caused a lot of disruption in my workflow to move my office upstairs into our master bedroom and turn from office mode to guest mode every time guests stay more than a night. I can't work from my master bedroom on a regular basis because my husband works night shifts and needs to sleep in our bed during the day. However, our large extended family has come to count on us having this guest room available as we live close to an urban center and they all live further away. It feels a bit like we're being taken advantage of, as there are so many affordable hotels around our area and neither of our families are struggling financially, so they could easily afford it. Recently, a guest unexpectedly stayed with us for 2 months without our express invitation. The guest spouse was in the hospital, and the only hospital that could serve them was in our urban area. For the first few weeks, we were very accommodating, but after that, it was a huge strain on my work and our marriage and home life. The guest spouse was not in urgent danger, although we did feel very sympathetic to their situation. My husband and I felt it would have been more sustainable if the guests stayed with us each weekend to visit their spouse in the hospital and left during the work week. But the guest rudely dismissed our concerns and is a difficult person, and we felt we were unable to lay out any kind of boundaries with these people. So instead, I struggled to complete my full-time work, fell behind on deadlines, and really ended up with a lot of anxiety. It was so tough on our marriage that we ended up in couples therapy over this, as the feelings of powerlessness, as well as the arguments that would happen between us, were very tough for us to deal with. As of today, we are both doing a lot better, and we're on a positive healing trajectory. The guest spouse has since been released from the hospital, and they have both gone home. After they left, I put my foot down and said never again. I got rid of the guest bedroom, and from now on, guests will have to sleep on the couch, with a 2-night limit, or they can go to a nearby hotel. My husband was okay with this decision, but we already know for a fact that some members of our family will be upset with us, particularly the guest who overstayed their welcome and their spouse, as it is likely that they will need to return to our area regularly for hospital checkups. We both feel anxious about how they will react. However, they do have the finances to stay in a hotel for a night or two when they need to. So it begs the question that I really need answering. Am I the jerk for doing this? Is it okay that I set boundaries on who can stay at my house and for how long? You are not the jerk in this situation, and no, you did not overstep your boundaries. It is actually a really good thing that you decided to do this, because even if people get upset by this, it lets you as well as your husband take back control of your life, as well as your home. It's completely inappropriate for people to just show up unannounced and say, hey, can I stay over? It doesn't matter if you're in a good location and it's like an ideal spot for people to go and to travel and to do all sorts of things. It's inconsiderate, and it's definitely not something that I would put up with. So good for you for putting your foot down and deciding that enough is enough. Because honestly, you went above and beyond what anyone would have expected from you, especially having someone stay over your house for 2 months without even asking in the first place. My entitled cousin's children caused $10,000 worth of damage in my home, destroying priceless items that I hold dear, and now they are all banned from my house. As I mentioned in the title, this deals with my entitled cousin and her spawn when they visited me in my partner's home. 2 years back, her children stole several video games and a tiny treasure chest that was filled with Sacagawea coins. Because of that initial incident, I banned them till I got my stuff back. She refused to bring back my stuff as they told her that I gave it to them, which honestly is an absolute lie. I would never give that to those kids. Fast forward to this last Christmas, and she comes to my party uninvited. In the first 20 minutes of them rolling up at my house, her kids jumped up, stood on, and busted my original NES system. They broke my custom Venetian blinds, destroyed the grill on a 1928 radio, drew all over my coffee table, sat on a broken camel saddle and cracked it further, even though I asked them not to, explaining that it is absolutely broken. And then to top it all off, they were caught sword fighting in the kitchen with my kitchen knives. I just about had it, so I screamed at them that they have to go and that they have to leave this house. And at this point, we hear another crash. Her youngest child, about 7 years old, decided that I'm not allowed to yell at his mom, so he shattered my jade dragon on my fireplace. My partner got fed up at this moment as well and announced that he has called the cops on them. At this point, they get in their car and quickly leave. The cops eventually showed up, but my aunt and uncle who were at the party refuted this story to the cops, as they didn't want my entitled cousin and her kids to get in trouble and possibly arrested. And as a result of that, they also have officially been banned from my house as well. So now we're on the 4th of July, and my entitled cousin wants to borrow my house, all with me not being home by the way, for her 4th of July party that she wants to run. And after all the damages that she as well as her kids have caused in my house, I said no. Though I did offer that if she gives me a $10,000 $10,000 damage deposit I would happily accept, as most of, if not all of that, would be used to repair my house and the priceless items her kids destroyed. She ends up just calling me names and hangs up the phone. Now she called back to let me know that I apparently owe her, so that means she should be allowed to host her youngest birthday party at my house. You know, the kid who shattered my dragon. I reiterate that it's a $10,000 deposit, and again, much of that is going to be used to repair my home. So she calls me names again and hangs up. At this point, my aunt tries to get involved and tells me how horrible I am, but honestly, at this point, I just don't care. I am simply done with my family. None of them will ever be invited back to my home. I'm happy to live my life with my partner and to never deal with my family ever again. What kind of parent rolls up uninvited to a party and then lets their kids run rampant all over somebody's house, doing $10,000 worth of damage in their home, destroying priceless things that meant a lot to these people? Honestly, if I was them, I would have called the police as well. There's no way I would let anybody treat my valuables like that for a second. In my opinion, if there's toxic people in your family, you have every right to cut them out and get them away from you. They don't respect you, your space, or your property, so there's no reason for them to be around. I don't care how nice they have been or how nice they will be. It does not ignore the fact that there was some serious property damage that needs to be accounted for. It would all be a lot different if some of this damage was an accident. Like, I can understand that kids play around and they mess around, so they might bump into something and unfortunately break it. But these kids were intentionally going off the walls without any kind of discipline from their entitled mother, by the way, destroying everything in their path. So good for this original poster for deciding to cut these people off, because who knows what kind of damage they would do if they really did have their party while they were not there. Am I the jerk for being upset at my ex-fiance for them marrying another man without telling me? My ex and I have been in a relationship for about 3 years when I asked her to marry me. We had our occasional arguments, but all in all, it was actually a very loving, supportive relationship, and she seemed really happy when I popped the question. She excitedly said yes, and for a while, everything was great, and we were on top of the world. At some point, though, I think she started getting cold feet and doubting whether she wanted to go ahead with the wedding, which she never really communicated with me, but I could tell that she was becoming more withdrawn from me, and she seemed to avoid talking specifics about our getting married. I didn't want to see it, but in hindsight, this was a clear red flag that something was off, and sure enough, she broke off the engagement a couple of months later. There were a lot of hurt feelings on my end because I hadn't changed my mind on wanting to make her my wife and spending the rest of my life with her, but I accepted her decision and we decided to move on as friends. After all, we still cared for each other a great deal. Obviously, staying friends after a breakup is easier said than done, but initially, it worked as well as could be expected under the circumstances. I was still nursing a broken heart, but we regularly caught up with each other and talked about everyday stuff without things getting tense or weird. We even regained some of the closeness that got lost at the end of our romantic relationship, which was confusing in a way, but still was very nice. A few months later, though, I noticed her becoming more aloof again, much like the change in her behavior during our relationship. And since we were now just friends, I didn't feel like it was my place to confront her about that, and so I just let it slide, hoping that it was just a phase and that we'd find a more stable balance in our friendship eventually. Fast forward another month or two, and out of the blue, I'm getting a notification on social media that she changed her status to married. This is less than a year after we broke up, and she hadn't even told me that she was seeing someone else, even though she had ample opportunity when we were regularly talking to each other on a friendly basis. It felt like a massive punch to the stomach, seeing that pop up during a casual late-night browsing session. I honestly felt sick to my stomach all week, and just so you understand, I'm not mad at her for marrying another man. Yes, I feel hurt that she moved on from me so quickly, and I think it's not wise to marry someone less than a year after you started dating him, but that's her right and I'm not disputing that. But the fact that we were ostensibly still friends, and she didn't even mention this major life event to me, you know, the man she was initially going to marry, and that this is how I had to find out, feels like a huge betrayal. I'm so upset at her for blindsiding me like that. In a way, it's even worse than being broken up with. She told me I was acting entitled and possessive, but I feel like she's gaslighting me. Is it so crazy that I expected her to give me a heads up? Not to get my approval, but just to make sure I didn't have to hear it from someone else, or on social media in this case, because I never would have done that to her, not in a million years. So what do you think? Am I the jerk in this situation? The way you're acting in this situation is just absolutely unreasonable. She does not have to report every aspect of her life to you specifically. specifically. She is not beholden to you. She does not want to marry you. In fact, she broke up with you. But for some reason, you're hanging on to her like a leech, expecting her for some reason to tell you everything she has planned. Like you are not getting married to this woman. She is not obligated to have you in her life. Also, she was bound to move on eventually. Did you really think she was just going to stay friends with you and stay single? Because from the way you're describing it, it sounds like you're almost hoping she'll come back to you. And from the way you're acting, it kind of seems like this is why she didn't tell you in the first place. She was probably concerned that your reaction would be an overreaction. But I think what might be worse in this situation is the fact that you think her getting married to somebody else without telling you first is somehow worse than being broken up with. That is really toxic behavior, to be honest, because you have no say in what she can and can't do with her life. So honestly, I think you need to work on yourself, and I think for your own happiness, I think it's time to move on and find someone who will want to be with you, because it looks like your ex-fiance has obviously moved on with her life. And from the looks of it, I don't think you have yet, and I think you'll be a lot happier when you do decide to do so. I am very allergic to my boyfriend's cat, and I'm afraid he'll choose the cat over me if he has to, and I'm not sure what to do. My boyfriend and I have been together for 2.5 years. We met abroad and are planning to go to his country and stay there. He has a cat that's been staying with his mother for about 3 years now, ever since he left his country. The problem is that I'm very allergic to cats. It's not a life-threatening situation, but it does make me extremely uncomfortable. And the worst part is, medications do not help. I have tried everything. I know he had the cat for around 7 years prior to him leaving, and the cat was with him through some tough times, and he loves it very much. When we talk about moving to his country and living together, he always wants to live with his cat. I said I will do anything to make this possible, as well as trying some anti-allergy treatment if I need to. What I am afraid of though is what if the treatment doesn't work? When I try to talk to him about it, he gets very defensive and says, "I'm not giving up the cat or you." But honestly, either me or the cat is going to have to go if these treatments fail. He never reassures me, and I wish he would say that if everything fails, the cat could stay with his mom, as she only lives 5 minutes away. But he never brings up that option. He just keeps repeating that he will not give up his cat. I feel like he cares more about the cat than he does about me, which is really disappointing. I feel like I offer to do all I can, but there is a chance the treatment will fail. He does not want to talk about that possibility, and when I push, he just says that he doesn't want to lose either of us. I don't know what to do. I'm afraid to move to his country, as well as to try the treatment, only to then gamble on if it's going to work or not. It also makes me so angry that after 2.5 years together, planning our life together as well as a family, I cannot get a reassurance that if everything fails, he will choose me over his cat. I don't know. Should I keep pushing the issue, or should I let it go and hope that if the time comes, he will choose me over his pet? You are about to move to another country with your significant other, under the assumption that he is going to love and protect you, as well as try and keep you in his life. If I was in your shoes and there was any doubt in my mind that my future husband would pick a cat over me, there's no way on earth I would move to that country. I'm not about to uproot my entire life just for my significant other to kick me to the curb for some cat that's probably going to die in 5 years. That is a financial obligation that I am not about to make, all because my significant other isn't giving me a straight answer. So personally, I think you need to have a very serious conversation with your future husband and say, hey, we need to figure this out. If the treatments fail, the cat has to live with your mom. She lives 5 minutes away, so it's not like you wouldn't be able to see the cat. I mean, it's not your fault that you're allergic to the cat, and that it's going to be incredibly uncomfortable to try and live with a cat that you're allergic to. You honestly can't help that, and you're doing everything you can to make things more tolerable. But if the treatments don't work, you need to make sure that your husband isn't going to pick the cat over you. And I honestly, in my opinion, from my perspective, would not move forward with moving to another country until I know for a fact that my future significant other is going to be loyal to me. My husband has cameras installed everywhere, and I'm not sure how to convince him to get rid of them. I am a 23-year-old woman, and I'm originally from Belarus, but I've been living in Warsaw, Poland since I was 16. And that's where I met my husband, Brandon. He's 33 years old, and he's an American who was temporarily living and working in Poland. We met last year and got married at the beginning of this year because his contract was coming to an end, and he would be coming back, and we didn't want to get separated. We were able to move to the United States in June. I was under the impression that Brandon lived in a city. That's what he always talked about. But when we arrived, we were picked up by his father, and we drove over 2 hours to their house. They live in a very rural area with almost nothing around for miles. I don't drive, and I don't even have a driving license. I didn't need it when I lived in Poland because of public transportation. kitchen, and so I'm not really getting around anywhere. So I have to rely on him, his father, or his stepbrother. I thought it was just a miscommunication, or that we will be moving soon, but Brandon said that this is where we will be living. It's a huge old house that we share with his father and his stepbrother as well as his uncle. The property is very run down, and they have a farm with farm animals and a place that they butcher them. I want to find work, but because I don't drive, I can't go anywhere, and he didn't like the idea of me getting my driver's license so soon without knowing the country, so he suggested that I just get used to it first. I've been feeling very off about everything, but he dismissed my concerns as culture shock and told me that I would get used to it. I was alone in the house one day and was cleaning up the place when I found a hidden camera. It was very small and not obvious at all, so because of this, I started looking, and I found one more in our bedroom and bathroom, as well as another one in the kitchen, and before I had time to look for more, they came back, so I had to stop. I confronted my husband at night when we were alone in the bedroom, and he told me that the cameras were for security. It's a rural place and we need them for protection apparently. I told him I understood, but I said that it left me feeling very uneasy, especially with them being in the bathroom and the bedroom, and I asked if we could remove them or at least make sure they're not facing the bed and that I would know where they are. And after asking him this, he said absolutely not, saying that we needed cameras where we were living, and basically demanded that I stop snooping around. I told him that I wasn't snooping and that I don't want a camera in the bathroom. He said no one but him and his family has access to it and told me basically to stop worrying about it. And that is when I freaked out and I told him I want them gone right now. In response, he just laughed at me and said they're staying and that's the end of the discussion. And then he left the house to go to a bar. I tried to continue the topic, but he called me emotional and told me to know my place and to stop being an ungrateful jerk. And that honestly hit me very hard. I did only just arrive and am now making demands, and I might be unreasonable here, but how do I convince him to get them removed? Or should I just suck it up and appreciate the new house? What should I do? This sounds incredibly sketchy because no rational person should have cameras in the bathroom or have cameras facing the bed. That's just weird if you ask me. This does not sound like a healthy relationship, and it honestly sounds very dangerous for you in many ways. I personally would not want to stay with somebody who's violating my privacy like that, and to be honest, this is a massive red flag, a dangerous one at that. And the worst part about it is there might be something very serious going on that could put you in a lot of danger. Think about it for a second. He brought you from your home country into a place that you weren't expecting and has cameras set up all over the place that you did not know about. That's like 3 strikes already in my book. If I were you, I would dump this guy as soon as possible, find some way of getting a ride back into town, and get out of there. Because this does not sound safe, this does not sound like a good relationship, and I really think you can do a lot better than this. My husband is really jealous that my mom keeps buying me things all the time, and I'm not sure what to do about it. So my mom really shows her love by buying things, and she's kind of always done this. She just really loves giving gifts a lot. I sometimes even tell her that it's okay, you don't have to buy us stuff, but she does it anyways because she wants to. Anyway, I can't stop what my mom wants to do. She lives by herself, has hardly anyone in her real life to talk to, and all of her family is in Fiji while she lives in Australia, so she never sees any of her family, and she only talks to her sister on the phone and her best friend from another city. She only has a few friends and hardly sees them, and to top it all off, she's divorced, so my dad and his family don't see her at all ever. My brother does live with her, but he is either out with his friends, with his girlfriend, or at work, so she is lonely a lot of the time. She asks me to hang out all of the time, and I've hung out with her so much in the past couple of years, since I've been back in my hometown. Recently, we have spent a lot of time together, as nothing will be the same anymore because I'm about to give birth within a couple of weeks for the first time. So I have spent a lot of time with my mom, just because I know this time is about to be taken away from me. She has bought me a lot of things, always buying me lunch when we're out, buys me some groceries here and there, and gets me clothes as well. She's not super rich, so she doesn't buy me every single thing I ever need, but she does give me a lot of gifts. She has even made a huge hamper pack with lots of things our baby will need when he's born, and she makes us hampers randomly, sometimes like housewarming gifts, for example. She brings fruit and other food for us when she comes over, and always sends me home with lots of random groceries that she has spare of in her house, and always pays for dinners when I'm going to her place. When we're at the shops, she buys me random things if she has the money, so she is overall a very giving person. My husband's mom has not bought him a single thing since he was 14 years old, and still never brings him even one thing when she visits. She even made him pay for her and his stepdad's food, as as well as food for his siblings with his own work money as a teenager, and he had to go buy the groceries himself and cook it. When he moved out, nobody helped him, and he has bought everything for himself. When he started talking to his dad again for a few months, his dad offered to pay for our internet one time and would have helped him more if he was still here. He did unfortunately pass away. So that's the difference between us. My husband has mentioned that he is jealous when my mom buys me so many things, and he always kind of acts jealous and feels bad, and I just don't know how to not feel guilty. I feel bad for him that his mom doesn't do this for him. I just don't know how to act when my mom buys me things. Today, because the baby is almost here, I didn't have much grocery money, so my mom took me grocery shopping. She has bought lots of things for my husband too, like nice birthday gifts as well as random gifts overall, here and there, and I usually share the snacks and the food my mom makes or gives me with my husband. Sometimes she even pays for his lunches as well. Basically, I just feel more and more guilty because he looks and acts jealous, and I just don't know what to do. It just feels like I can't act happy, and when my mom buys me things, I end up feeling guilty instead, and it's just a cycle on repeat. What should I do? I think your husband really needs to grow up in this situation. This is really ridiculous. He's getting upset that the house is getting food as well as gifts for the baby. Like, it's not your fault your mom is trying to be kind and step in where his mom is clearly lacking. Like, motherly kindness and love is a basic thing, and there's nothing wrong or unusual about you getting gifts or some kind of grocery money or anything in between, especially when you're about to have a baby. Because right now, instead, he's projecting all of his problems on you and making you feel guilty about getting things from your mom, which is just ridiculous. So in my opinion, I would flip the script. I would spin this in a way and say, hey, this is a gift for both of us, and really try to lean into that. But I really would not feel guilty about this situation. You can obviously be sympathetic to his feelings without feeling guilty, because in my opinion, you should not be made to feel guilty about having a happy, healthy relationship with your mother. And honestly, he needs to see that. My partner keeps spending my money that I'm trying to save up, and I just don't know what to do about it. So I am 24 years old, and my partner is 25, and we've been together for 6 years now, and in the last year, she's developed this terrible habit of spending money that isn't hers. It started with rent money. I would give her half of my rent, and she was supposed to add her half and give it to our landlord to pay the rent. About a year ago, she stopped paying the rent and would just go and spend the money I gave her on God knows what. When I found out about it, we had a massive argument, but in the end, the problem got solved and she stopped doing it. A couple months ago, I went to buy something on my credit card and it got declined. I checked my account and the $500 I had on there had been spent, and I obviously freaked out, thinking that somebody had stolen my card. I asked my partner if she had seen it, and she asked me why. I told her, and she explained that she had my card and had indeed spent the money. I was absolutely furious, to be honest. And to be honest, I kind of still am upset. Money is not exactly tight, and she has no reason to steal money from me, especially from my credit card. Then today, I checked my savings account because I'm saving up for a business expense, and I look and find out that there's $100 missing from the account. She had taken my card again and spent $50 putting fuel in my truck, with the rest of it being spent on groceries, adding up to about $100. It doesn't sound that bad, but the fact that she took my card without asking, spent my money without asking, and I don't know what groceries she actually bought gives me flashbacks to when she did this the first time, and I just don't trust her now. How do I stop this behavior, or am I being too overprotective of my finances and should just let her do her own thing? What should I do? I think you need to circle back and think about what you just said. She is straight up stealing from you. She is taking your card without your permission and buying stuff that you did not want to spend money on. And that is not okay. Your financial security is absolutely important. And the fact that she is violating that again is a big red flag that you definitely need to address. I think an obvious first step is to discuss this with her once again, saying, hey, you cannot take my money without asking. It would be different if there was some kind of mutual agreement between the two of you where she can use your card and get stuff as she needs it. But it sounds like after the rent fiasco, she's not allowed near your money at all, which in my opinion, based on what you're describing, is probably for the best. If that doesn't go over well, then honestly, you need to cut her off and possibly even think about breaking up with her. Somebody stealing from you is not somebody that you want to be with. And what you're describing right now is straight up stealing, but it sounds like you're being way too passive to do anything about it, which in my opinion is not acceptable. You need to stand up for yourself and say, hey, you cannot take my money like that. And obviously you want to go about this in a way that's not argumentative, but in some way is calm and collective. But I think you need to know what your plan of action is going going to be if you do end up breaking up with her, which is honestly your decision. But in my opinion, if I was you, I would not be staying with this woman. She would have unfortunately proven for the last time for me that she cannot be trusted and that she's going to steal my money, which for me personally, I am not okay with. That is not the kind of partner that I would want to put up with. So hopefully this gets worked out. Otherwise, you're going to see more and more money slip out of your account without you noticing. And pretty soon, it's going to get out of control before you realize it. An entitled Karen prevents me from getting on the subway, pushes me on the ground, breaking my phone, and just when she gleefully thinks she's getting away with it, she gets caught by the security guard. Here's what happened. My previous job was on the other side of my old home city, so I had to take the subway no matter what I did. And fun fact about this subway, it can be quite busy at certain times of the day. And today at this time was one of those times. And worst of all, it was right when I just wanted to go home. The first train I tried to catch was as full as a tuna can, and the second train had a little space. Next to me was an entitled Karen with a double buggy. When I finally wanted to get on the train, the entitled Karen looked at me and made a break for it. She ran unlike anything I've ever seen before, straight for the door, squeezing into the train, and literally pushing me out of the doorway of the train. I could not believe that this was happening as I responded and said, "Hey, stop it, I just want to go home." This entitled Karen pushed harder and said, "Me and my kids also want to go home." As I was trying to explain to this lady that no, you do not need to push me out of the doorway, she says, "I don't want you to take this subway." She pushes me out of the way, this time onto the ground. The doors closed and the subway rolled away. The entitled Karen looks through the window and makes some idiotic gesture and shows me some very specific fingers out of the window of the train. She rolled away looking smug and satisfied as I slowly stood up, realizing I scraped my head. I looked down in my pocket and the entitled Karen also managed to break my phone with this action, so I could not even call the police if I wanted to. Thankfully though, there was a friendly old lady and a security guard close by who checked up on me almost immediately, asking me if I'm okay and if I needed any assistance. I told them that I was fine, and that the scratch wasn't that bad and that I would be fine. The security guard then told me to please take the next train to the next station and to visit the security office there. I thanked the security guard as well as the friendly old lady who helped me out, and the next subway arrived in about 20 minutes. The other security guard was writing a report about my statement I just gave him, as well as looked at the scratch on my forehead, while also recounting that they had security footage from inside the train, as well as the station where you can clearly see exactly what happened. The incident was reported to the police, and the entitled Karen had to pay for my new phone. Also, as icing on the cake, the entitled Karen was taking the train without a valid ticket. This entitled Karen, as a result of all of this, is now not allowed to be within 5 meters of me. And every time I see this entitled Karen on the train, she gives me this look of absolute defeat and disgust and scurries away to use another compartment. Hopefully, I will never have to deal with this entitled Karen ever again. It is so nice to see justice come down on people who absolutely deserve it. And this entitled Karen certainly had it coming. She pushed somebody out of the train simply because she did not want them on the train. I mean, how petty and ridiculous can you possibly be to prevent someone from traveling home? That is honestly just ridiculous, and it's so good that the security guard as well as the security footage could prove that this lady did this, because there would have been nothing worse than this lady getting away with this and denying it even if she did file a report. So this is some beautiful karma that came her way, and hopefully this taught her a lesson that you can't treat people like this and expect to get away with it. I caught my girlfriend having regular phone calls with her ex-boyfriend. As a result, we broke up, but I'm thinking about getting back together with her. What should I do? My girlfriend and I have been dating for about 6 months. This entire time we've dated, I haven't sensed anything wrong. It's been the most stable, loving, healthy relationship I have ever had in my entire life. Last week, I caught her in a small lie. In order to cover up for that lie, she lied more and more, and it built this tower of lies that completely collapsed. I ended up breaking up with her over everything. Long story short, she's been having a secret friendship with her ex-boyfriend from years ago. They broke up because the relationship became stale. They stopped spending quality time together, if you know what I mean, and essentially just became friends. He's a rather shy and awkward guy and didn't have many friends, so she continued to be friends with him. They would regularly talk on the phone like 2 to 3 times a week when we were not hanging out. To be fully honest, I don't care about her being friends with her ex-boyfriend. Relationships are complicated, and sometimes people feel the need to continue to be in someone's life, despite their past or whatever may have happened. But it's the lies and the deceit that made me end up breaking up with her. She lied to me so many times to cover up the fact that she's been calling him in secret. She did it throughout most of our relationship, even though she felt it was wrong. However, despite all of this, I still feel some sort of pull towards her that I've never felt towards any other woman in my entire life. I was so sure that she was the one, and all of this happened so suddenly. She has started therapy to try and figure out why she acted the way she did. She has shown me so much remorse and regret that I truly believe she doesn't want to act this way anymore. I'm so stuck on what to do. I don't feel like we should date right now because she needs to get her stuff figured out, but I don't want to move on either. I truly love this girl and it hurts so bad. Does anyone have any advice on how to handle this situation? What should I do? I honestly think you've made the right decision by breaking up with her. It's cool that she's gone to therapy to try and figure out her stuff, but I think you're probably best to move on from this lady. She was obsessively lying to you about talking to her ex-boyfriend, and you said it best. You probably would not have cared about the situation at all, and you probably would not have cared if they were still friends even. But it's the fact that she went behind your back and lied so obsessively that made you feel like this just wasn't worth it. And in my opinion, I think you need to hold on to that feeling, because who knows what else she could lie about in this situation. I'm not implying that she is a liar by any means, but she did feel the need to lie about something like this, especially since it's connected to her ex-boyfriend. I mean, that just looks really sketchy. So overall, in my opinion, I would stick to what your plan is and honestly try and find ways to move on, because obviously you still have some kind of pull towards her, because I think in the end you actually really do like her, and I think to an extent that's okay. But anything further than that and actually going back to some kind of relationship would risk you being lied to again, and honestly you just don't need that, no matter how remorseful she actually feels. I found out that my girlfriend cheated on me, and I don't know how to move forward. My girlfriend and I have been recently going through a tough time. There were a bunch of lies that came to the surface, and we had been having issues, but we sat down and decided to tell each other the truth about everything, and that we would work on the relationship, as we have been together for 4 years already, and we're about to make it 5 in a couple of months. So giving up on the relationship wasn't that easy. After that discussion, everything seemed to be going pretty well. The communication, affection, and the whole mood overall of the whole situation felt much better, and we started being as it was back when the full love and issues weren't there. This felt amazing, and I was so happy to have a girl that's willing to work through things, and I was doing everything in my power to keep being the man she dreamed of. Fast forward about 2 months and everything is going great. We're still working on things and the relationship is going well. However, one day I had a terrible gut feeling for some reason, and my heart was incredibly heavy. She has a journal and I have never ever read it before, as that's such an invasion of her privacy, and I wouldn't want that done to me, but something in me just kept telling me that there was something there that I needed to see. I give in to my curiosity, and sadly, I did find something. Her latest entry was a prayer to God, asking for forgiveness and help. She laid out a lot of her wrongs in the journal entry, and also asked for his help to help her overcome all those wrongdoings and thoughts. She also stated that he keeps bringing good people into her life, and that all she does is hurt them. After reading a bit more of that entry, she says that she doesn't know if she's ever gotten cheated on by any of her past relationships, but that she has cheated on all of hers. The next sentence broke my heart into pieces, more than I could ever pick back up. She blatantly said that she cheated on me, and that she couldn't tell me, because if she did, she knew I would leave her for sure. After reading this, I didn't know what to do or to think, and honestly, I still don't know. I had thought we'd laid out everything about us, and wanted to start over with honesty being the top priority, but this broke me so much, because she had promised me she never did things while we dated. We both did things while we were on a long break, but we were honest about it and we understood. I'm the most understanding person ever if you're just being honest, but this huge lie she's hiding fully broke me. My issue during the relationship was that I looked at other women and sometimes she caught me, but during the relationship I never flirted, kissed, or did anything scandalous with another female, if you know what I mean. I had the utmost respect when it came to that, and I knew me looking at other women was terribly wrong, and I knew it hurt her very much, and I constantly worked on stopping doing that until eventually I didn't anymore. Her issue was being a liar. She would lie about big or small things, and I constantly kept catching her in her lies, to the point where she finally acknowledged it was a problem and that she was trying to be more honest. We both had our issues like any other human being, and I understood that. That's why I was so willing to work through things, as we're all human and we make mistakes. All that that matters is putting in the effort to be a better person. I forgive and forget a lot of things, but being cheated on is something I cannot forget or forgive at all. I have never felt this pain before in my life. This girl means so much to me. I saw her as being my wife and starting a family with her. She got so close to my family as well, and was the first woman my mom ever accepted as a decent girl. There was a whole future plan with this girl, and that sentence just broke all my visions. It hurts so much because for some reason, I still don't want to leave, all because of all the memories and the love I have for her. But how could I just forget that? And she won't even tell me about it. How would I confront her about it also? I invaded her privacy, but if I didn't do that, I would have never known that she had cheated on me. I don't know what the right choice is here. I'm so conflicted on what to do. I feel like leaving might be what's best for me, but it seems so scary and painful. Every day will feel empty because she's been a part of my life every day for the past 5 years. My brain is so fogged, I'm barely sleeping, and I have to see her every day and act like I know nothing while hurting inside in pure silence, all while she walks around thinking the relationship is going great. I have never felt so lost before in my life. What do I do? This is a really tough one because you've got to know and understand deep down that this woman that you love so much absolutely cheated on you. She betrayed you behind your back. And worst of all, she hasn't even told you about it. You have got to realize that that alone is a massive red flag, and in my opinion, is a massive deal breaker. At that point, it doesn't matter how many years you have been with this lady. She cheated on you, not the other way around. She even admits in that journal entry that she has cheated on every partner she's ever had. This lady sounds like a serial cheater, and you are just another one of her victims. So I think regardless of what you choose to do, you really need to understand that first and foremost. I know if I was in your situation, there's no way I would stick around with this lady, especially after finding out her past, as well as what she's currently done to me. So honestly, I hope you do find some peace and happiness in your life, because I can tell you, unless this is addressed and some way resolved, you're probably not going to find that peace anytime soon. I made a huge mistake dating in my friend group, and now I'm pretty sure I need to find a new group of friends. As the title says, I messed up pretty bad. I dated my now ex-boyfriend in my first year of college in my friend group. Everyone thinks he's a super nice guy, and everyone had this amazing perception of our relationship, which honestly is my biggest issue right now, because it is not as perfect as people thought it was. He was so affectionate, so everyone thought we were really cute together, and I liked it at first. Then he told me I love you less than a week into our relationship, and then he started to say I'm going to marry you 2 months in. At this point, I started getting really uncomfortable. I told him my boundaries a couple of times, but he just brushed it off, so I just gave up. Whenever we would run into our little relationship issues, he would become so self-loathing that I practically had no choice but to drop the subject and instantly forgive him out of guilt. Plus, there were a couple of breaches of trust. When he shared information I told him in confidence to my mom, he was also pretty immature with his actions after we broke up. He started spreading lies to our friends about me, and when I blocked him on basically every platform known to existence, he disrespected my boundaries by somehow emailing my school email. And this has actually happened another time when we went on a break a month before the breakup. So what's my issue here? I never want to see or hear from him ever again. The only people who understand me are my hometown friends, since the majority of my college friends are also close with him. They have this perception of him that he is this perfectly amazing, fun, sweet guy, and honestly just brush off whatever I've been saying about the breakup to the point where I'm giving up on telling them. It's either they defend him or I don't even know what to bring up to them. I'm so tired of them putting him on a pedestal that he doesn't deserve with the way he treated me. They refuse to listen or offer any support to me. I'm not trying to kick him out of the group. I just need them to stop seeing him as this perfect person, which he absolutely is not. Literally, one of them told me that before we started dating, she said that she saw absolutely no flaws with him and that he would be the perfect boyfriend for me. Would I honestly just be better off getting new friends next year? I would say I'm pretty sociable, so it honestly wouldn't be awful. It would just be a lot of work. I'm just trying to decide if it would be worth it. What should I do? First off, I don't think you're going to be able to make any of these supposed friends feel any differently about your ex-boyfriend. You unfortunately can't make people see things from your perspective, especially when you know the truth about how this guy actually is, and these people are just not getting it. But honestly, real friends would have your back, and they would try to understand where you're coming from. But it sounds like they're also really good friends with this guy, so I don't think they're going to be swayed by what you have to say anytime soon. soon. While I don't think you need to give up on them being your friend, I think it is important for you to find more friends that you can also hang out with. This can give you some solid options if those friends actually do start taking his side and only his side, which would be really unfortunate, but you know what? If they do make that decision, then that's honestly all you need to see, because that will show some true colors, and you'll know for a fact that no, I don't want these people in my life. Today, I messed up by reading my wife's journal. This didn't happen today, but more like a couple of months ago, and this is honestly such a big mess up. To provide some context, for the past 3 years, I have been working a very grueling and time-consuming job in sales, as well as marketing and recruiting. While working in that field, I got real low, like lower than I've ever been. I had little to no time off, and when I did, I was working from home. Regrettably, I started drinking more than usual. I didn't like it, but it had a hold on me that I couldn't shake. I was never aggressive when I was under the influence, but according to my wife, I became overly affectionate when I was under the influence, which I thought wasn't a bad thing, so I convinced myself I didn't have a huge problem. And my wife never said anything other than the occasional sigh whenever she saw me drinking. At one point, I was sober for 6 months, and I honestly felt great, but it didn't last. Growing up, we have always been very trusting of each other and very open with each other about how we feel about arguments or things that upset us from the past 10 years. In short, we have phenomenal communication and are very considerate of each other's feelings. We have honestly rarely ever had arguments, and when we did, it was very quickly resolved. We took proper steps to communicate to each other and to explain exactly what upset us, as well as to apologize and to make amends and to tell the other person, I'm sorry and I love you. We really practice real, sincere apologies from both of us every time. And for the past 10 years, it worked perfectly. Fast forward to more recently, and I changed jobs. And as a celebration, we went on an amazing trip, just the two of us. And this was all to make up for the lost time that we didn't get the chance to share together. It was both of our idea, and I had saved up enough, so we just packed up and left. Everything was amazing, and we had such an amazing time. We still talk about it to this day. While on the trip, I was letting my phone charge because it ran out of power while using maps all day and driving. So she let me use hers to watch movies on her phone as she was falling asleep. I was watching a few episodes and some movies, and I remembered a while ago that I saw in her memo application a note labeled thoughts or what's on my mind. But out of the entire memo application, it was the only note that was locked. Back then, our anniversary was coming up, and she always jokingly said that if I didn't know what she wanted, that she has a list on her phone that she can give me. But I knew that this locked section was not that. From past discussions with my wife, I knew that this locked note was actually her journal. I remember at one point I even asked her if I could read some of it, only to get shot down and said, no honey, that's personal. At the time, I didn't really care, but I was still curious. But now that I had the phone right in front of me and we're on this trip, curiosity flooded my mind. So I go to this note and it asks for a password when you try to go into it. After a few tries of trying anniversary dates as well as birth dates, I finally decided to use one of our cat's names as the password, and lo and behold, it opened. My heart started racing and I felt my body perk up. I checked if she was still asleep and she was. Just one entry, I thought. Just one and I'll close it. So I start to read, and the more that I read, the more I regret. She had entire entries dated, and the most recent one was a full-on rant about all of my flaws, my insecurities, and my bad habits. Things that I attributed to depression from overworking and just having no drive to do anything. She picked me apart more and more each entry, and I just couldn't even understand. I don't want to share what she said, as it was all hits on my personal insecurities that she knows hurts me. So why? Why not communicate this to me and talk to me about it? I work from 6 a.m. to almost 11 o'clock p.m. every day, and I hated it because I had no time to help around the house or to be there with her, but she insisted that she understood and that she didn't care. We often communicated about it, and she always ended it with, I'll always be there for you no matter what. We're in this together. But in her thoughts, she calls me a lazy drunk, as well as a good for nothing, saying how I don't help enough and that she cleans up after me. There was so much more that dug very deep and really hurt. And even though I hated it, I completely understood. My mind was focused on work literally 24/7. I helped where I could, but deep down, I felt it wasn't enough. I drank a lot and regrettably felt too tense without it. She had every right to be mad, but it still hurts. There was more, but I closed it and just sat there. I don't cry at all, but I'll admit I did tear up a bit. I didn't want to ruin our trip, so I kept it to myself and never confronted her about it. But starting the next day, I did everything on the trip. Driving, cooking, preparing clothes for her, everything. Anything I could, I did it all. She even started bragging to her mom and friends who called while we were on the trip. She would tell them that I was making her feel like a queen and that I've been doing everything on the trip, which honestly made me feel good. And it made me feel like I was making up for all that I didn't do in the past 3 years, even if just in a small way. I've carried on this way for months now, and I can see changes in our relationship in a very positive way. More positive affirmations from each other and deeper love. But I can't help but think about how she actually feels about me at my lowest point, and I wonder what she thinks of me right now. I regret reading her journal, and I feel I betrayed her trust by reading it. But I honestly didn't think I would find out what I did. So yeah, don't mess up like me and don't read your spouse's journal. You'll be happier if you don't. That is definitely a rough one to deal with because journals are like the one thing that you really don't want to read from somebody else. In most cases, it's literally somebody's pure, unfiltered thoughts that they really didn't want anybody else to see. So I really feel for you in this situation. But from the sounds of it, you guys have a fantastic relationship. Your communication is on point, and honestly, that journal probably was just there so she could get her feelings out of her head, put it down on pen and paper, so to say, and then to turn it around, have a positive attitude, and try and work on the relationship that she does have. It honestly sounds like she took some steps in order to cope with the things that you were dealing with at the time, and in my opinion, that is absolute evidence that she loves you and wants to keep the relationship on solid footing. Obviously, she didn't want you to see these feelings because they're not something that she wanted to share with you. These are things that she was keeping to herself because she didn't want to hurt you, and maybe just getting it out of her head and writing it down probably really did help her in the long run be a better partner to you, and vice versa. So I really wouldn't feel bad about how she did feel about you, but instead focus on how she acts and treats you now. And from the sounds of it, you have a fantastic relationship. I think you've learned a very valuable lesson about respecting people's privacy, and next time, respect her privacy and boundaries, because crossing that line is only going to cause friction in your relationship. An entitled Karen refuses to pay for my services after I tirelessly work to take care of her kid as her nanny. Here's what happened. I have worked in childcare for half of my working life, at different centers, but also as a nanny and as a babysitter. As you can imagine, I've run into a lot of entitled Karens over the years, and this particular situation was definitely a lot worse than some of the other ones. First of all, I took this particular job because I needed something income-wise, so I could keep my apartment. I stuck with this job longer than I should have, and honestly, in the long run, I regret it. This entitled Karen that I was working for was a working single mom, and her absolutely sweetheart of a child needed medical and behavioral interventions, so she got the state's assistance. The state gave me this job through the Welfare Employment Office. With childcare that is state subsidized, the government pays part of the wage and the parent pays the rest. That's how it's supposed to work, and that's how it's always supposed to work. This is going to be important later. This was back in 2005, so minimum wage at the time was $7.25 an hour. The government would pay for half, and then the parent was supposed to pick up the other half. All this in accordance with the contract for the job. It varies depending on the needs of the family, but the state paid me about $3.66 an hour, and this entitled Karen was supposed to pay me $3.65 an hour at the end of each day. I met with the family and talked over these terms, and everything was agreed upon and signed by both parties. I then turned a copy of the paperwork back into the employment office for their records. The next day, which was my full day of working with this entitled Karen and her child, thankfully all went really well. It was mostly spent with me as well as this child getting to know each other and getting used to each other. The kid did try to test boundaries just a little bit, but I was very firm on enforcing routines that we already established. For me, it was a pretty standard first day, something that I would normally expect. The entitled Karen comes home and the child went running up to her, eager to show off his art project as well as what we were working on. I had other obligations after work, so I go up to this entitled Karen and I asked for my day's wage. She looked absolutely stunned, pretending like she didn't know what was going on. She then asked me, "But don't you get paid by the office for this?" I personally could not believe what I was hearing because all of this was explained when the contracts were first signed. I explained how it was supposed to work and showed her the paperwork we both had signed the day before, agreeing that she was supposed to pay her part every day. She said, But that's not how it works. I can't do that much. She was horrified that she would have to pay me anything, somehow thinking that $3.65 was a livable wage for any human being. It was an absolute nightmare trying to get her to pay me anything at all. Because I was making some actual progress with her kid, and no one else wanted to be assigned to this family, I stuck around. The entitled Karen paid me about $5 for the day, plus food and transportation costs. But that's the maximum I was ever able to get out of this lady. Eventually though, I did have to end up giving up my apartment and move in with my boyfriend who's now my husband. How tragic it is that this lady was only getting minimum wage for taking care of a child like that. She put her heart and soul into this, tried her best to take care of that kid, only for this entitled Karen to not pay her. The original poster went on to say that she did report this lady multiple times to the agency she got work from, but nothing good came out of it. Apparently the office that worked there was super corrupt, and the entitled Karen that she was working for was also a social worker in that place, so it probably never got past the front desk. And although this story doesn't necessarily have that same zing of revenge that you would expect, I think the best silver lining here is that that kid got some quality care from somebody who cared. This lady stuck around for 8 months dealing with this garbage. In my opinion, that's about 7 months and 29 days too long of not getting paid properly for a hard day's work. So kudos to this original poster for this type of dedication, because honestly, I don't think I would have the stomach to deal with an entitled Karen like that for that long. How do I tell my friend that I don't want to go on vacation with him and his girlfriend? For the 4th of July, my best friend's girlfriend invited me down to her beach house. It was supposed to be me, our other friend John, that's not his real name, and then my best friend and his girlfriend. I appreciated her inviting me down, as I don't like being home because of family problems. She herself can also relate to that, as she has her own problems, so I appreciated the invite. She's honestly like an older sister to me, and I'm thankful for her for treating my best friend right. John ended up getting sick and wasn't able to make it, so it was just me who went. I wasn't a fan of third wheeling, but anything is better than being at home. My friend picks me up and we head to her beach house. What I thought was going to be a fun weekend away from my family turned into an awkward event really quick. The entire weekend they wouldn't stop being all over each other. We went to the beach and they were quite cuddly, if you know what I mean. We go into the ocean and they're hugging and kissing in the ocean, all while I'm just trying to stay afloat. We go back to the house and they're doing the exact same thing, and I just sit there awkwardly and watch TV. We then went to an outdoor bar, as well as a club, and they tell me about how they're trying to have kids and that they can't wait to get married. My best friend told me that he even wants me to be his best man. I told them congrats and that I'd take them up on the offer, but then they start telling me some very intimate details, if you know what I mean, about their lives, and it really made things incredibly awkward. No one was even under the influence at this point, since it was when we first got there anyways. When we get back from the club, I'm trying to go to sleep on the couch, and they are on the other couch making things incredibly awkward, and I honestly wanted to scream. We went to a mall the next day, and they're going on vacation together next month, and they said that they need to shop for their getaway. I walked away and shopped on my own, and it was the most fun I had the entire trip. They even tell me that I may be a godfather in 9 months' time, because who knows what's going to happen when they go on vacation together. I just didn't know how to respond, and I was like, yeah, okay. They have been together for a year, and I understand there's a honeymoon phase, but I didn't think it would last this long, nor did I think they would be telling me these kinds of details. I guess they got the hint eventually when we were driving home, and they were blaring pop music and screaming along to it with me in the back seat, and when they told me to sing along, I didn't even look up from my phone. I have never had a girlfriend, and my friend can't comprehend that. He's had previous girlfriends all through high school and college. He's been crushing on this woman for years, and they finally got together, which I'm happy for, but he keeps telling me to just get a girlfriend. Yeah, okay, as if they just grow on trees, and that it doesn't take two people to agree to date in the first place. I ask out women in person and on apps. I've asked if any of my friends knew someone who was single, but no luck. I'm making an effort, but it's not easy, and I didn't expect it to be. Now his girlfriend texted me today and asked if I wanted to come to the beach house for another long weekend, and I don't know how to tell her no, as I honestly don't want to be the third wheel again. I just feel like they acted immature the last time I went with them, and I'd rather not go through it again, as it made me feel very sad and it was very awkward at times. What should I do? Being the third wheel in that kind of situation with people who are that passionate about each other is really awkward, and I have been the third wheel in this kind of situation, and let me tell you, yes, it is incredibly awkward. The original poster has it right. I mean, the way they were acting is just super inappropriate, especially for having a guest come along with them. It's almost like they were doing this just to kind of brag and show off to somebody. It almost also seemed like they were trying to do this just to see how uncomfortable you would become, which in my opinion is just really gross and incredibly toxic. If I were you and I was in your shoes and I had that kind of experience the last time I went with them, I would tell them straight up, I'm not really interested in going anymore. You can do it in a non-aggressive way, but I would just be honest with them. I would say, hey, I didn't really have a good time last time and I don't really want to go again. And then just leave it at that. So yeah, I would just politely decline. And if they ask for more details, just be like, hey, I don't want to be the third wheel and I was really uncomfortable the last time. So yeah, that's what I would do if I was in your situation. But what would you do? Leave a comment down below. We would love to hear what you have to say. My fiance seems to be working against my diet, and I honestly don't know what to do about this. A few months ago, I decided to get healthier. We ate a lot of fast food and I was noticing some weight gain, and I was honestly unhappy with it. I want to eat healthy and make good choices, but he keeps ordering food and bringing home treats specifically for me. For example, he'll get me McDonald's or he'll order a dozen donuts. This will happen a few times a week. Other than this, I'm the only one who cooks, and if I'm not feeling up for it, our only options are whatever he wants, and honestly, he's pretty picky. And anytime he picks the food, it almost always is fast food. I have told him I will just eat at home and he can order himself dinner, but he doesn't like this and goes on a hunger strike or broods all night. So I feel like I have to give in. It's either I plan, prep, buy, and cook dinner for both of us on the limited diet that fits his taste, or we eat fast food. I've expressed my frustration with him bringing home and offering all these unhealthy meals, and I have a really hard time saying no to them if they're being offered to me. And I told him that, but he keeps doing it. It is a problem with self-control, and I know that, but I'd like him to work with me on it, and I feel like he isn't taking me seriously. Sometimes he says, should I order this or are you gonna get mad at me again? For the record, I've never gotten mad at him ever about food. I either jokingly tease him or remind him gently that I feel really disappointed and hate myself when I eat outside of my diet. Even today, he ordered extra food without telling me and gave me 3 mozzarella sticks. The other part is that I end up paying half the total for food I don't even want. He uses food as comfort, and I notice he does this with our pets as well, and will give them human food a lot. He also likes to treat me because food used to make me happy, and he said he thinks I look good regardless. My confidence, however, has absolutely tanked, and I hate my body and I feel ashamed. I don't know what to do. I can't tell if I'm being petty and need to grow a backbone, or if he's being a jerk and not respecting me. What should I do? I think the way he acts when it comes to food is absolutely ridiculous. I think what probably started as playful flirting and somehow like this little game that you played together has transformed into your fiance deciding what you can and cannot eat, as well as pushing food on you that you're trying to break the habit of eating. You're obviously trying to make steps so that you can move forward and live a healthier life, and it doesn't help that your fiance is basically ruining that. He's not at all respecting your boundaries, and it honestly seems like he's doing this on purpose, which is really unfortunate. And sure, he loves you no matter how you look, but you've decided that you want to eat healthier and that you want to look better for you, which is all the motivation and all the reasoning you need to eat better. So I think having an honest conversation with him and explaining all of that and saying, hey, you're doing this thing that's really upsetting me and I feel like you're crossing boundaries, all of this explained to him would do a really good job of helping him understand where you're coming from. You could also just decide, hey, these are the foods that I'm gonna eat, and do like some extensive meal prepping so that you can have your own food and he can go buy whatever he wants. It's obviously a more expensive option and it will definitely come out of your pocketbook, if you will, but it could be a solution to this problem so that you can eat healthier and he can still have the fast food that clearly he likes to cling to. So hopefully you have this conversation with your fiance and you're able to articulate exactly how you feel, and honestly, I hope it all works out for you because it sounds like you're making efforts to improve your health and to really improve your body overall. And because of that, I hope all of this works out and you're able to find some solution to this issue. How do I navigate having friends that don't seem to be happy for me when I start dating someone new? So I'm a 34-year-old female and I've been divorced and single for 2 years now. I've been dating off and on during this time. I have noticed a pattern of one particular group of friends who I've been friends with for the past 3 years, and these friends all happen to live together. And every time I start to date someone, they never seem to be excited for me when I meet someone new, even if they haven't met them yet. Recently, I have met someone that I'm really sweet on, and I'm honestly afraid that this friend group is already going to give me the cold shoulder, especially when I want to bring him up and talk about things we did on our dates and what I've come to know about him. I don't feel like they ever seem to be happy that I'm going out and meeting people versus just staying in the house and being miserable about my failed marriage. It seems like that was the only time they had any interest in my life. And worst of all, I consider them to be close friends, and I don't know how to approach the fact that I feel this way or tell them about how I met someone finally and that I see some long-term potential in them. I'm honestly not sure how to get through to my friends, and at this point, I could really use some advice. To be honest, from my perspective, it doesn't sound like these are very good friends. You say they're your close friends, but it doesn't seem like they're acting like it. It's a really big red flag to me personally when I see that they were only interested in your life when you were at home miserable because of your failed marriage. And now that you're getting out there and trying to find someone new in your life, they're deciding, nah, let's give them the cold shoulder and be really toxic. That's a really nasty sign in my opinion, and it is not something that you really need to deal with. I personally don't think you need to go to them ever at all when it comes to who you are or are not dating. They clearly are never going to have a positive opinion about anything you're doing anyways, so why run it by them in the first place? Is there anything you can do about this? No, not really. All of you in this scenario are grown adults, and in my opinion, you should probably find some friends who are going to be supportive, because it sounds like these three people are dismissive and giving you the cold shoulder no matter who it is, and that's just really not fair. So yeah, I would say try and bring it up to them again, but if this happens again, then let that be a clear sign that maybe they're not the best people to go to when it comes to your future relationships. My girlfriend is demanding to read text messages from my ex or else she's gonna break up with me, and I'm honestly not sure what to do about this. The title says it all. My girlfriend wants me to show her text from my ex-girlfriend, otherwise she says we're through. For some context, I've been dating my girlfriend for about 6 months, but due to my recent personal mental health issues, I had taken a step back from my relationship from my girlfriend to take care of myself for about a month. I spent less time with my girlfriend, however, I still made sure to talk to her every day. We just didn't hang out as much. We went from seeing each other for 4 to 5 days out of the week to just about 1 or 2 times a week, and I hadn't done a lot otherwise. When we finally talked it out, my girlfriend said that me being away from her made her overthink a lot, and she felt that it was unfair that I didn't vent out my frustrations and such to her first, which I didn't do as I felt like it was an extra burden for her, and instead I tried to bottle it up, or I vented to 2 of my close friends about the issues, also adding that some of my stress was from her, which I eventually talked to her about. Adding more context, I recently talked to my ex-girlfriend, who I ended on good terms with 2 years back. We did this for a bit as she started to talk to some of my friends again, and they eventually arranged something to give her a chance to talk to me again. I had spent about a month or so focused on giving myself time, but I wasn't talking to my ex for the whole time. It was more like the recent week when I talked to her and let her catch up with me, and we talked about her personal feelings, as well as me giving her an update of how I've been. It was made clear I had a girlfriend as well, so there was no funny business. The situation became an issue though, when she went through some of my messages with a close friend and found out I was talking to my ex recently. But I had also made it clear that I didn't attempt to cheat or flirt. However, I did not want to show her the text messages as my ex-girlfriend had talked about some personal feelings and some issues. I had nothing to hide personally, but I wanted to respect my ex-girlfriend's privacy and turn my girlfriend down. My girlfriend went on to say that there was nothing to discuss then, and after the night, she made it clear that unless I had the intention to show her my text messages with my ex-girlfriend, then we would be apparently done. She says that I value my ex's privacy over our relationship, which I repeatedly said was untrue and tried my best to reassure her, but it was all to no avail. Currently, I have no idea what to do, as I tried my best to tell her everything we talked about, but she doesn't accept it and wants to see for herself. I don't believe that I value my ex-girlfriend's privacy over our relationship, but I just think that it is unfair the way she's treating me. I don't know what to tell her or do, but I really do not want to lose her. What should I do? I can kind of understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, your girlfriend's trust in you is slowly eroding. From her perspective, it probably looks like, oh, he went to vent to his ex-girlfriend instead of me. Is he gonna break up with me or something like that? I think for the sake of your relationship with your current girlfriend, you might want to revisit the thought of, hey, maybe I should show her these messages. Because from the sounds of it, you're about to lose your girlfriend. And also, why were you not upfront with your current girlfriend about you texting your ex-girlfriend? That is super sketchy behavior no matter how you look at it. I'm sure that probably threw her into a tailspin the second she found out her boyfriend was messaging his ex-girlfriend. So I wish you the best of luck in figuring this one out, and hopefully whatever you decide to do doesn't make you lose your girlfriend that you currently have, because it honestly looks looks like you're about to. My mom is unintentionally causing a rift in my marriage, and honestly, I'm not sure what to do about it. My husband and I have been married a little under 10 months, and we've been together for 4 years prior to our marriage. My mother and I have a relatively good relationship, however. Her values are way different than mine. For example, I make more than her, but I live below my means, whereas she tends to live above her means and always tries to get me roped into her financial endeavors, such as co-signing for mortgages. At the same time, she does what my husband thinks is pocket watching, such as giving us a hard time if we order takeout, constantly asking us how much we have in our savings, as well as telling us how bad we are with money, and always telling me to stop spending as we, meaning my mom and I, need money. Then, in the same breath, asking to use my credit so I can take out a $40,000 car loan under my name as she and her boyfriend are waiting to hear back on their $800,000 mortgage approval. She even says that she'll make the payments when they come in. I tell my mom many times that she is living beyond her means and that maybe she should reconsider toning it down a bit. However, whenever I tell her this, she tells me that she deserves nice things that she likes. My husband is getting fed up as we have a baby, and by his logic, he thinks that if I want to finance anything, why not do it for us? He's also tired of my mom seemingly disregarding the fact that I'm married with a kid, as marriage is not just about the love, but it's also about the legalities that surround it, finance being a major factor in our marriage. He also hates the fact that my mother never once tried to help me financially, but in contrast has absolutely stifled our finances many times. He is no longer sleeping in the same bed as me, and we're arguing like never before, and it breaks my heart as he's an amazing guy. By my mom's logic, she gives examples on how other kids treat their moms like gold, while hers treat her like garbage. She also tells me how there's no such thing as an ex-mother, but there is such a thing as an ex-husband. I love them both, and I want to help my mom, but I don't want to lose my husband or mess up our finances by getting involved in my mom's desire to have nice things. What should I do? I think your husband has his head on straight, to be completely honest, and it's time for you to set some serious boundaries with your mother. She is taking advantage of you, and it looks like your husband is the only person that really sees it in this marriage. She wants to use you for money so she can get her own nice things, all because she thinks she's entitled to it, which, by the way, you're only entitled to that if you can afford it. And I would even go as far as saying that your mom's not the one causing a rift in your marriage, but instead your own inaction of setting boundaries is what's actually causing the rift. If I was in his shoes, I would especially be upset at the way you're not telling your mother to buzz off. She's legitimately trying to get money out of you just so you can foot the bill when she decides not to make payments on that car loan, or any of the other financial obligations she's trying to force on you. She even implied that you could have an ex-husband, but you can't have an ex-mother, with her basically saying you can get a divorce, but you can't get rid of me. So in my opinion, it's time to set some very healthy and serious boundaries just to try and save your marriage. Your husband and your child, as well as yourself, deserve to be financially stable, and that does not include having to deal with your mother and all the things she wants you to take a loan out for just so she can have nice things. That's honestly just ridiculous. So I wish you the best of luck in having this conversation, and hopefully you can set some boundaries with your mom so that she can understand that your family, your husband, and your child come first, not her. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.